Gonna close that first though. Close everything first, because I don't want it to crash. Oh, I'm gonna keep my terminals though. That fucking... I'm gonna... yeah. Have them fly. Fuck you. I'm sorry, but you're dead. So I used my vacuum to kill the fly. I got it close enough. Earned the trust enough to... Okay, let's go. Hopefully don't crash. So I'm gonna restart. Yes. Historique. Okay. Cool. Okay. I'm gonna listen to Mike's disappearance or last crime. I can put it in the stream, I guess.
I want to say plastic. Maybe it was plastic. I don't know, but it was maybe a sheet and a plastic something. I don't know, but it was fabric looking. And he shoved all that in the backpack. Then he had a bottle, which it was like, you know, those old timey bleach bottles that are like white with the sprayer thing. A huge one.
Like a spray thing?
Yeah. He had that, put that in the backpack, and then something else. And when I saw the bleach, I was like, oh my God, like I just kind of lost, like in my head, I kind of lost it. And so it was something else, like a tool or something, not a hammer, but something like that. I don't know. And then he shoved that in the backpack, and then I said, Brian, where's the gun? I don't want the gun anywhere near me. Where's the gun? It's right here. It was on the floor at that point, I guess because he knocked it or something. I don't know. But he picked it up, and he put it in the backpack, and he zipped the backpack up. And then he opened up a little zipper of the front backpack, took his keys out, and then he starts crying. What have I done? What have I done? It's too late for us. And I know it's not. I'll just let me go to work, and I'll meet you later. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. And then he opened the door himself, and I never turned the car off or anything when we were at that park. And he got out, and he shut the door, and he said, I'm so sorry, and was crying. And I said, I know. And he turned right to head north. And then I went on. So...
Denise has just described a fairly simple case of armed kidnapping. If the surveillance footage is congruent with her story, it would be a relatively straightforward process to convict Brian of an armed kidnapping felony, of which the minimum term of imprisonment is 10 years in the state of Florida. What's fascinating is the audacity of Denise to voluntarily attempt to imprison Brian, despite knowing that Brian could retaliate and confess to Denise's involvement in Mike's disappearance 16 years ago. Denise's arrogance is leading her to believe that she could get away with anything, because she successfully got away with a marital affair, a murder, life insurance claims fraud, and now she's taking it one step further.
And supposedly he was going to his office.
Where's his office at?
But all he wanted was to talk to me, for me to call the divorce off.
Jesus
and intermittently he would say he was going to kill himself. A lot he said that. Because I was like, are you planning on ending both of our lives? Like as he got calmer at CBS, I said, are you planning on, ending both of our lives today? Well, mine. I'm planning on mine. And then he would say, I want to kill myself. He must have said a million times, I want to kill myself. I've lost everything. I reached back a couple of times at CBS and would like touch his knee. Like when I could tell that he was getting calmer, I was like, I know. Like, so the video will probably show that. I mean, if there is one. Trying to think of anything else he said he was going to kill himself. I didn't know if I didn't plan on coming here because I wanted to follow through with what I said. I wanted to talk with Marcus. Brian also promised he would tell his dad everything and he would go away to rehab. He's supposedly being treated for sex addiction. So he said he would go away to rehab. I was going to follow through with that because this is going to make him really mad. And so I called Deborah, my sister made me call her husband, who's a policeman.
It's fucking large, bro.
But I've already told you everything, but I still don't know if it's the right thing to do because it's going to make him so mad. And then you guys, I can't have a 24-hour policeman with me, and he's going to, wherever, if he gets arrested, if he doesn't, he's going to be free at some point. I have a daughter. It's not his daughter, but I don't know.
Alright, give me 1 second to step out, see if I need anything else. Do you need anything right now? Or?
No, I'm thinking no, there's something else.
Okay, my first suggestion was, to mind right now, is get a chair. There's still some things that have to be done. File for an injunction. I'll accompany you, we'll go to the courthouse, you can file for an injunction, okay?
I'm just going to make this one.
Absolutely, here, if you want, I can, whichever you prefer. So most people use their phones nowadays, but sometimes it's helpful to write it down and if you want a piece of paper.
What does that mean?
An injunction is an order of protection. It's like a restraining order, and it's going to prohibit him from having any contact with.
The process of filing for an injunction against Brian is described in detail to Denise. Things are going well for Denise from her perspective. Everyone she's speaking to seems sympathetic and helpful. This is helping to lower Denise's guard to set up a confrontation with detectives about the disappearance of Mike Williams. If the confrontation comes as a surprise to Denise, her response may be easier to assess in comparison to a prepared rebuttal.
If it did get approved today, would he be served today?
If they can locate him,
Okay.
absolutely. It would be a priority, yes, to as soon as possible.
Okay.
That's the goal there. Because it'll go into effect.
Don't know if it's any better.
Served with those papers. Any contact from there is going to
Well,
be a violation of that injunction that you can report.
What the fuck, I
and you
need
can be
another
charged
row?
with, of course, all up there. But that injunction is going to work to protect you. It's going to no contact by phone, email, certainly not in person, no third-party contact, nothing of
Yeah.
that.
The victim advocate gives more advice on steps Denise can take to stay safe and the availability of a safe shelter if she were to ever need it.
Let me step out and see if I can
Okay,
solve
nice.
anything.
They mentioned anything to you about processing your vehicle where this all occurred?
What does that mean?
That evidence where, and,
Could go for a radium, I guess.
The car's right out front.
Right. What I need from you, I just need your.
Or I could check
ID.
it
That's all. Yes, ma'am.
Processing the car is standard procedure, and it refers to collecting any relevant evidence from the car, such as DNA evidence to prove that Brian was there. Even though the police are planning to obtain as much information as possible about what happened to Mike, they still must abide by protocol to make sure Denise's allegation is adequately addressed. At this point, the police know everything they need to know about the kidnapping incident. The only reason they are still questioning Denise is because they want to transition the conversation to discussing Mike Williams.
Alright, not to be redundant, but I'm gonna try and go through the story again and just try and get a little more detail on everything. So, car in general, do you usually lock it at night? Do you keep it unlocked or
Yeah, I
something?
usually lock it.
Did you lock it last night?
I thought I did.
The detective goes through Denise's timeline of what happened earlier in the morning again. They are only doing this to establish further rapport and to build Denise's confidence that they are primarily concerned with the kidnapping.
Fuck you.
With his dad calling you saying that's odd, would you be willing to do a control call to his dad to see if his dad says anything more to Brian himself?
Denise will reject the idea of doing a controlled call with Brian or Brian's father Marcus because she's afraid that information related to Mike may be exposed during the phone call.
That's
Oh my
good.
gosh. Brian's gonna ask me immediately, where are you? Why are you not at work? So, and then his dad, I don't know. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to say I'm at the sheriff's department.
Right. But as far as anybody asking where you're at, all you gotta do is tell them you got to go somewhere by yourself and think.
Cool.
I really don't want to make contact with him. I mean, unless y'all think that it's necessary.
It would be rare to see the victim oppose a reasonable suggestion by law enforcement to further the investigation if the victim had nothing to hide. This is because there is no downside to a controlled call, but the obvious upside is to corroborate Denise's story. This could be used for Denise's benefit if Brian pleads not guilty to Denise's kidnapping accusation. The detectives notice Denise's unusual reasoning immediately, and this just furthers their suspicion of Denise.
Well, it's your option if he told his dad what took place, and his dad is checking on you and expresses he explained it to him or whatever, then we've got that information that he's told somebody else. If he winds up sitting here having a conversation with you about it, that's just
Shitty,
more
man. The points.
evidence per se
I can't.
that corroborating your story about what took place.
I think Marcus is calling me just to set the conversation up because Brian really didn't want to tell his dad the details. He wanted to tell him that he reached rock bottom, stuff like that, but he didn't want to tell him the details because his dad is so upset about the mom, and he kept bringing that up, that they are going through that, so he didn't want to tell his dad.
Yeah,
So I don't think calling his dad, I'm probably 100% sure he didn't tell him all the details. So it's not like Marcus would repeat them all back to me because I'm pretty, it was going to take me going there and me basically making him do it. And the reason he would do that is because he would think I would call the divorce office and we get back together in the end. Him calling me, he's just going to be, where are you? What are you doing? He's going to want to set up that meeting with Marcus. Oh my God, I don't know, because I don't want to make him more mad before he even finds out. You know what I'm saying? And the point would be to try to get him to say stuff like.
And to find out where he is, if he would wind up telling you, want to meet you prior to going there, and we can try to have people in that area whenever he arrives, not somewhere necessarily that he's at it that second, but even if he did pull off to the rest of the road and said, I'm at Capitol Circle, I'm pulling into the CVS. Anything like that would give us an idea of where the location is, because FSU police already have the information, and we've got the information out. Our thing now is locate him, check on his welfare. As you say, we don't.
I could go on an exploration.
Do you
locate him.
Do you know? I mean, have y'all checked him at his work in the parking lot to see if he's there?
We've got people checking.
Because I think that's where he's
The
at.
moon got a lot of stuff, and it's a rover.
Just think about it.
I'll think about it.
You can take a few minutes, and but one of our biggest goals is to be able to locate him.
Right. Well, and find out if you can find out from those people if his truck is at work, because that's what I'm thinking. I'm really thinking that is there.
The detective's strategy is to bring in Officer David McCrae.
Yeah, I'm going a little bit
He
on
happens
a
to be
bit,
Denise's
sure.
brother-in-law, which makes him able to play the role of good cop effectively. His role is very nuanced in that he is there to make Denise feel protected while simultaneously highlighting how substantial of a threat Brian is to her safety. This is done in an attempt to get Denise to talk about Mike.
Oh yeah.
McCraney will make the argument that Brian
It
is
wasn't
afraid
long.
This kidnapping incident is not enough to put him away for good. But if Denise talks about what he did to Mike, Brian could be in prison for life.
All right.
Yeah, I've told this story a million times.
All right, I've done it a few more times. When did he pull up back in the car this morning? I know you told them, and you told me a little bit about
When he was
sheets.
leaving. Yeah, I didn't know anything was back there. And he got his knees into that seat and started pulling stuff out. And
In the very back.
that's where he was hiding. And so he pulled the backpack. It was loose stuff, like he pulled it. You know what? He might have slept there last night, and that's why she was there. I don't know how long he'd been there. But he pulled out a sheet that was like this color. And then he pulled out something else because it was heavy. So that's why I think it was some type of plastic. I'm pretty sure it was. Pulled all that out, shoved all that in this backpack. and then pulled something else out. And again, I don't know what it was. It was bigger than a hammer, wider than a hammer, but I don't know what it was. Put that in there, and then there was this bottle, like this big of like industrial bleach, like a bottle, and he pulled that out and put that in there. And then when he turned around and sat down, I said, "Where's the gun?" Because he was about to get out. And he goes, "Right here," and it was on the floor. And he picked it up, put that on top, and then zipped it up, and then unzipped a little tiny pocket that I could see that was right here, and got his keys out.
He told you he was there to kill himself this morning.
He told me that he had nothing else to live for, and that he wanted to kill himself. He told me that many times. He told me he bought the gun to kill himself, because I said, "Where did you get this gun?" Because I've never seen a gun that you would kill people with. You know, he's just got the hunting guns. And he said, "I bought it to kill myself."
What do you think he brought all the other stuff for?
I have no idea. Because at one point I asked him, I said, "Did you really plan on today being the day that you would both die?" And he said, "Well, me." But then when I saw that other stuff...
That's a good place too, so...
That's what he said.
Denise, he was going to kill you, and for whatever reason he didn't go through with it. He brought that stuff because it could cover his tracks. And I'm sorry, you know that I love you, and I would never let anything happen to you. But I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat stuff. You did the right thing by calling me, but Denise, he was going to kill you.
Well then when he finds out after 4 o'clock that there's a restraining order, he's going to know that I told him he's going to come for me.
Well, hopefully he'll kill himself. Don't worry about it, okay? He's had control of you for years and years and years. He has ruined your life. You and Deborah are the same age, which I'm sure it has eaten at you and eaten at you. And I couldn't say anything. I talked to Warren one time. I said, "We need to talk to Denise," and he wouldn't do it. He said, "I'm just glad she didn't go crazy." Okay, but you've been living in a crazy life forever, and you finally had enough to get out. I know, Denise. He did it, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't think you did anything ever whatsoever to be held that over your head forever. He was going to do it again. He wasn't going to kill himself. He was going to kill you so that you didn't talk about him later. That is the truth. I've been doing this too long. I've talked to everybody I know over the years for 15 years about how and what we could do. 15 years ago, he walked in and told you he'd done something.
It's full. It's fucking full, man.
Denise,
No.
you have got. He is just not going away.
It's so full of ice, bro.
He's either going to kill himself.
It's
because
fine, it's
no one
fine.
asked you, but he's going to try and control you. He's going to try and stop people from talking about what he did. He didn't bring that crap to kill himself and bury himself. He brought it to kill you and bury you and get rid of the problem because he knows he's got a problem.
He didn't say any of that.
This is not how divorces go. What did he ever say to you back then?
Back then about Mike,
About Mike?
I never had any reason to believe that he would do that. I never would have believed.
Knowing what you, do you remember the time you went to Atlanta when you had a boyfriend up there and he showed up with a gun?
Yeah.
What makes you think he wouldn't do something like that?
I guess because,
If I want the PvP,
not now, but he, and obviously this doesn't, he loves the Lord.
It's like
He
a
was
copter.
Christian. That's why I married him.
I
He
need
was
to
doing prison
push
ministry. I was doing prison ministry.
in the
I
direction I
had no
want.
reason, and I've never seen him like
It's
this.
gonna
I've
give me the
never seen
inertia.
him like
You
this.
saw him this way 14 years ago in Atlanta.
Not like this. This
I
was
understand.
different. This was very different.
All right.
This took it to
No.
a whole nother.
Knowing what you know of 15 years, do you think he would do something like that? Knowing what you know now? Because it took me a long time to wrap my eyes. I said, no.
I don't,
Knowing what you know now.
even after today, even after everything that he said to me today, I do not believe, I don't. And I don't believe he was there to hurt me. He said over and over, I want to
Neutral,
kill
neutral.
myself. I don't want to leave. I'm so
So
miserable. I have nothing to
plastic.
live for.
It's from plastic, and then from meant to bury you. And you think he would hurt you?
I guess I can't believe it. And he didn't say, I mean, he had the gun on me, but he didn't say, well, he said he was going to hurt me.
Right.
He didn't say that. He screamed that. Yeah.
Okay, to stop, I have to.
We can't put it back in the bottle.
No, no.
Okay, and there's no amount of counseling that's going to help him. He was never normal. He's never going to return to whatever he was. The only thing that's going to work now is you testify, and he goes to prison, and he goes to prison for a lengthy period of time, and maybe it's 5, 10, 15 years, but at some point, he may get back out. Okay, if he kills himself, well, problem solved. But you can't, I believe he had something to do with Mike. I absolutely believe it.
I do not, but this, what you're talking about, has nothing to do with tonight.
The way Denise is protecting Brian in this way is what makes this interrogation so fascinating. Her ideal outcome is Brian going to jail, but only for the kidnapping. She does not want Brian to be punished for Mike's murder because she's afraid she will get dragged into it because Brian would likely confess to her role. But prison is prison, and one would think it would be a fairly misguided move to attempt imprisoning someone who shares your dark secret. The risk is obvious, but Denise, while having demonstrated the ability to think quickly on her feet, has questionable logic.
Tonight is what I'm worried about. When I
It's
go
the
file this
culmination of
thing,
everything.
he's gonna know.
Well, he's going to know no matter what, because he's going to jail today if we find him. Until we find him, do you think you're in danger?
Yeah,
Do you think Hansie's in danger?
yeah.
Do you think Johnny's in danger?
I don't know, the Stafford and me and Ansley, yeah.
How come?
Because he's driving around with a gun.
He only wants to hurt himself. It wouldn't hurt any of them, would he?
He wants me to stop the divorce. That's what he kept saying. I have nothing to live for if you follow through with this. I have nothing to live for.
But it's not like you're going to get back together.
Well, that's what he wants, and that's pretty much what I had to. I didn't say that, but I pretty much had to say, we'll meet with Marcus. I didn't say at the beginning. I said this could be your rock bottom. This could be, all that. I said all that. I didn't say I would call off the divorce.
I believe you know enough about. He said something. He alluded to something. Why not, with his money and his youth, move on to something else? What is so important about keeping Denise?
Which he has, because
I think he's
always
afraid you're going to
prostitute.
say something that he has said in the past, and this, by being married to you, is the only way he can keep control of that. Even if it's a little something, he has said something to you, Denise, at some point about.
Well, then I would really have to. Think about it. He is threatened. I stayed with him so long before we separated because he would threaten suicide all the time, and he knew that would get me, and it got me every time. So he's been threatening suicide for over 5 years. I think people that threaten suicide don't do it. So I don't think he's going to do it. If he would have done it today, if he was.
He
going to
wasn't
do
there
it.
to kill himself today, Denise.
I can't
Ansley
accept
would have
that.
had no mother and no father.
I just can't.
What do you think he was there to do?
What he said, which was he wants to talk me out of the divorce. That's what he kept saying, screaming.
He was not there to kill himself. The threat to kill myself was to get you to do what he wanted you to do. He's so crazy that he believed you wouldn't tell anybody that he kidnapped you.
I promised him.
I know.
Many
That's how
times.
crazy he is. Are you kidding me? You say anything you did it right. You handled it perfectly. You should never do what he says. Fight for your life.
I
You
was
go to a
praying
public
the whole
place,
time.
and you got him to calm down.
There. But I'm scared to death for tonight.
You stay with us. He doesn't know
And
where I live.
there's a lady that said we were going to file a restraining order today, but I don't even know what time it is. I don't know if we
It's
were.
only-
It's almost 3. I don't know how long that takes. I don't know that
It doesn't
process.
take long. It'll be easy to do.
Do you think that I'll get it?
Yeah, you'll get it. It's a piece, but it's a piece of paper.
I know. And then then they go show him.
They're gonna.
That's a good alien planet, really.
Matt's going to be in
Okay.
charge.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know all the details. All I get is that little bit you gave me, and from what you told me, that's what it sounds like. It could be something a little bit different.
Jefferson
But it's
is
domestic,
really
so it's gonna be very
close.
serious from a judge. He's not gonna get out anytime in the next day or two to see a judge. But At some point, we got to bank on he is going to get out.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I didn't want to come.
I think that's Earth.
What other choice do you have?
I guess I was hoping Marcus.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go for Earth
at
too.
all.
Marcus got so much on his plate. Just like I say, if he's already cut him off, then maybe he finally realizes that it's time to quit helping him.
But I need to tell my attorney what happened today. She doesn't know. But yeah. So finish that sentence. You said so he will probably get arrested and then he'll get out in a couple
Where
days.
is it even?
Then what?
They'll
Alright, yeah.
end up, the state attorney will file the charges against him for whatever they end up the charge is, and then it'll drag out for some time. It won't be quick.
Oh, right, but during all that time, what about me? What about Ansley?
That's right. And that's why you have to go through with it.
Come on.
They may do electronic monitoring on him. They may put a big enough bond because they start in trouble. You know, they put a bond. A bond just means a promise to show up at court. It doesn't mean that I can't go out and kill you.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
The fact that you listened or didn't listen to him and drove to CVS probably saved your life. If you'd gone where you wanted to go and there was no one around, I don't think you could have talked him out of it.
It was just in
And
my
they shot you
head.
and buried you somewhere and you would have never been found.
It was just in my head to get to CVS. I was like, I had to get to CVS. It was so weird.
To me, him bringing those things, hiding in the car, directing you, he had it thought out.
Obviously.
Okay? And I know I keep telling you about it, but I'm telling you, he killed Mike. And he did it for you because he wanted you. And I know that's hard, and I know it hurts. But by God, I'm telling you, that's what happened. How old was Ansley then? Huh?
A baby.
Not even a year. He didn't care. Deborah and I saw Mike the night before with Ansley at the mall. And that's the last time I ever saw him. He didn't care about you. He didn't care about Ansley. He only cares about himself. He made Mike disappear, and he was going to make you disappear today. And you have got to get that in your head. You don't ever have to tell me or anybody else about it. But at some point it needs to come out because he did it. I am telling you. I don't think you had anything to do with it, but he held that over you. And I'm sure at some point he told you something. And I'm not trying to get you in trouble because I don't think he did anything to Denise. But I'm telling you, he killed Mike and he was going to kill you and make you go away. You need to hear that and you need to hear it a lot. You were going to die today. You got lucky. Okay? Next time, it might be he catches Ansley and you, and he kills Ansley in front of you just to hurt you. And if you think he's not capable of that, think about the man who brought something to bury you with, who brought plastic, who brought bleach to cover his tracks. Why doesn't it make sense? He's nuts. He killed your husband.
But if he is nuts, that crazy, then again, I can't have an officer live with me 24/7. I can't. I'm not safe.
He goes to prison for murder. You'll never see him again. He killed Mike. And he buried Mike where no one could ever find him. That is the truth. I'm wondering if he was taking you to the same place today that he buried Mike, because he's done it before. You have to wrap your mind around it, Denise. That is what he has done, and he's willing to do it again. He is going to kill you. And what we're talking about, Denise, I would never tell Deborah, or your mom, or anybody. This is just me and you. I swear I would never tell them. But were you sleeping with Brian the day that Mike disappeared?
No.
It didn't happen until later?
No. Yeah.
Well, but he wanted to, there's no doubt about it.
I can't even imagine. And I've never seen a person like this today.
You saw him in Atlanta. He's
Aversion.
against the wall.
Aversion.
Right.
Yeah. Aversion.
And that was pretty
You're
early
right.
on.
You're right. And this is why I didn't want to do it this way. This is why I didn't want to set him off and make him mad. And coming here, he knows he can't trust me because I promised him over and over I wouldn't do this. And that's why I
To save
didn't
your
want to do
life.
this.
'Cause
Yes.
You knew he would kill you.
Yeah. Well, to get out of the situation, yeah, I mean, there was a gun there.
Years ago when Mike Phillips and those guys at FTLE wanted to talk to you and Brian, y'all went and talked to him one night.
I talked to Mike. I talked to Mike.
But they wanted you to come in and do an interview, and y'all didn't do it.
We did 2 interviews. We did interviews with, like, not local people. It was, like, federal people. I did one, and he did one. And I think we did another one. But it was always in an attorney's office. And I don't remember. Mike Phillips came to my house one time, and I talked with him there. But the official ones were with federal people, and it was more than one.
With a law.
At an attorney's office, and they recorded it all. From what I remember.
Your attorney or Brian's attorney?
Well, I mean, he's an attorney who is friends with the Winchesters.
Who set that up?
Who set up the meeting?
Well, who set up the lawyer?
Oh, I would guess Marcus, because he's in that same little area where they all work together. I don't know, I don't really remember, but I do remember the location of the interviews were at the attorney's office, which is the same parking lot as Winchester Village. Because I remember having to go there twice, I think, or 3 times.
When all they ask you, do you remember?
Am I falling back or it's
Did y'all
like,
talk to him?
Yeah,
I'm just fucking
answer
climbing?
all these questions. I think there's a recording. I don't know. I don't remember. But I know it was definitely more than once. Because I think it was like me separate, him separate, and then us together. Maybe that was it. And I remember the location. And if Mike and them had contacted the attorney and asked him if we would meet with him, he might have said no. But I don't remember saying no to Mike, because I remember him coming to the house.
You think
so.
the attorney said, no, we're not going to talk to you?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying that could have happened because but Mike, I mean, would come to the house. So I don't know about that. All that I don't remember.
Well,
It should be recorded somewhere.
right there too.
I cannot believe
Okay, tired of that shit.
what's happening. Nan's like so upset. I just want us to be safe, and I know at your house we are, but other than that, I mean, we go to work, we go to school.
And a piece of paper, an injunction, or electronic monitoring doesn't stop me from sitting in a parking lot waiting for you to kill you.
So what am I going to do?
You're going to go forward with this and make sure that you continue telling the story and don't back off of it.
No.
And don't let him manipulate you into backing away or not testifying, because he's going to take it all the way.
But I told everything exactly how it happened. I did not exaggerate or lie.
I don't think you did either, and I'm glad you called me. I'm glad you didn't do what you told him you were going to do, because
It seemed like a good
I don't
thing.
know how you got away today.
I just kept praying.
I don't know how you got away. But in your mind, every time you think about feeling sorry for him, I want you to think about what he did, what he brought with him, and how calculating he was. Okay? You just got very, very fortunate today.
I know that. But I just don't want to go through that ever again.
That's why you got to keep going forward on this. And as you think about things, and
I will.
I know it's hard. I can't
I will.
leave the mic thing alone, because I'm telling
I know.
you,
I'll start thinking about
he
all
not
of
only did that, he choreographed the recovery of Mike's waiters. I was there for a week. And maybe that's what the fright is, that, oh, I'm going to get in trouble for that. Well, that's his doing. He did that. Okay? But I'm telling you, he is so manipulative. He is a murderer. He killed Mike.
While the officer is clearly trying to get Denise to talk about Mike, what he is suggesting also happens to be in Denise's best interest from a legal perspective. Denise is not comprehending the fact that Brian will likely confess to Denise's role in Mike's disappearance after getting arrested for the kidnapping incident. The officer knows this. Everybody in the building knows this. Denise somehow doesn't. She is holding on to the hope of Brian going down without a fight. Her psychopathic tendencies are impeding her here. In her mind, she genuinely believes there's a significant possibility that Brian will not retaliate because she is not capable of the ability to understand and empathize with the feelings of another person. If Denise had followed the officer's suggestion of speaking about Mike, the outcome of this case could have turned out very differently. This will be explained in more detail later.
I'm pretty sure the reason he was going to kill you today is he was afraid you was going to do or say something, or had speculation. They found nothing when Mike disappeared. Nothing. That is unbelievable. He's calculating. He's cold. I would hate to know the confrontation between him and Mike. I'm sure it was at gunpoint. But Mike thinking he's a friend. But there's no doubt there was a confrontation. I just always wondered where, what, and how, but it certainly wasn't the lake.
Yeah, it was the best.
What time was Mike supposed to go to the lake? I didn't even find out until 7 o'clock that night.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He was hunting in the morning, and he was going to go with a friend he had from work, a young kid. I can't think of his name right now. He's moved to Jacksonville. I don't know. But
I need you to wrap your mind around that, because I'm telling you, he's outside looking in. He was a part of that, and today was just an extension of who he is. He's not afraid to kill someone.
Yeah, it's a little bit like
today was
in
maybe
the
it's a public place, or maybe you had the right chord with him. Maybe you said exactly what he wanted to hear.
I was saying, you know.
But I think it's more. It was where it was. And he doesn't want to get caught. He wants to live. He wants to keep doing what he's doing.
That's when I told him he's going to kill himself.
There's no way he's going to kill himself unless he gets cornered and realizes that it's over for me.
Yeah.
But he didn't come there to kill himself this morning. And it wasn't going to be kill myself or kill you and kill myself. Because
that's a nice parking, isn't it?
Cover up his tracks.
That's perfect. That's so perfect.
That's a horrible thing to think about. But that's the truth. You need to.
I know, and what you're saying makes total sense. Yeah, it makes total sense. Well, then that makes me even more scared.
Denise doesn't budge, despite the competent strategy used against her and the seemingly perfect circumstance of having a brother-in-law perform the interrogation. The detective's final strategy is to increase the pressure and directly confront Denise.
We have never met. My name is Mike Levine. How you doing? Do you know that name at all?
No.
Okay. I'm with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Okay. I've literally known you, and I've known your family for many, 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 many years. Okay. The reason I say that is, you know, I've been looking into Mike's disappearance. Okay. Literally dissected as much as I could about you know, members of your family, Brian, Mike, and, you know, his family. Worked with a lot of people, you know, trying to figure out the whole scenario of his disappearance.
That's a bug.
And had to go back and literally reinvestigate a lot of things that was investigated before. And this has been an ongoing process for a long time. And you need to understand that, okay? You know, I used to know your gate code by heart and going in your neighborhood. I know your house very well. You know, I know when you took the carpet on, the whole works. You know, and there's a whole lot I don't know, okay? I want to talk to you about a couple of things, and maybe you can fill in a couple of gaps for me. Can you do that for me?
42 fucking ships.
Obviously,
It's
the
worth
reason
it to
I'm here, I
write
knew about
TT.
what happened today. Okay. And like the other officer said, you're going to have to it's going to have to sink in that today was going to be your last day. Please
Gonna have to go to
let
the
that sink in. When y'all were going towards CVS, it's what I can understand. He wanted to turn around and go.
Yeah, I already got one.
He kept saying go to the roundabout, and I think he was wanting me to go back, but I
Towards your
wasn't
house?
really listening. I was but I wasn't really listening. I was just trying to get
Yeah.
to CVS.
Where do you think Mike's buried at?
Oh, I have no idea
Any speculation on that?
on where he's buried.
Buried.
I mean, I believe,
You don't really believe he died on the lake.
I do.
Why?
I just always.
It's a nice
have. That's what I
design, though.
believe.
She admits that she
It's
thinks
only
Mike
2
died on the
million.
lake, but does not challenge the investigators'
And
question
that
about where he
design
was buried.
stuff.
If Mike died in a boating accident or after getting attacked by alligators on the lake, then he would not be buried at all.
And I'm
Therefore, by
gonna lie.
comparing her own answers together, they don't make sense because she does not challenge the assumption that Mike is buried, despite agreeing that he likely died on the lake.
And I have, from when he was saying roundabout, I don't know, I talked with the last two people, and I can't remember if he wanted me to turn left or right.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. Why do you think Mike perished in the lake?
I just,
Because he didn't die in Lake Seminole, okay?
that's what I've always believed, that's what I believe.
And why?
I've never been proven anything different. I don't,
Well, is there been any proof he died? If he would have perished in that lake, he would have been found.
I gotta add some
There's never been a
trusters to
person
that.
that has fallen over or whatever
Jesus fucking
that they would have come
Christ.
to from Mike. I mean, that's literally, it's an impossibility that he died in that lake.
I guess that's just what I believe.
I know it's the moon. It's
Really?
impressive for the moon. Let's
Were
say
you,
that.
and, I guess you, Mike, Kathy, and Brian, y'all are pretty close before Mike disappeared, right?
Yeah.
How close were y'all?
I mean, I would say we talk pretty much every day. We were very close.
Yeah,
I'm still very close with Kathy.
yeah, I know that. I mean, again, we researched, trips y'all used to make to Orlando, some other stuff. Apparently you were really close, okay? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't
Hey,
know.
man.
Me and Kathy she's texting me right now, so we're still very close.
Okay. If I say we're totally aware of all the videos, you probably know what I'm talking about.
If you say what,
The videos?
I would have to see them.
Oh, no, that's not gonna happen. But
Okay.
you're clueless when I say videos.
I don't, yeah,
You, Kathy, and Brian?
I would have to see them.
You have no idea what I'm talking about. Don't say you've got to see it.
No, I'm just starting to feel very uncomfortable.
Okay.
But
Well, I've been uncomfortable for a long time because we needed some things on this case.
right,
And we were hoping one day that either Brian or you maybe could fill in some of the gaps there, fill in a piece of the puzzle.
right. But I guess right now I need to focus on this and what happened this morning, and I want to get this restraining order done by 5 o'clock, and I want I want me and my daughter to be safe, and that's what
Well,
the focus on.
there's no
I
doubt
don't even
that
have
Brian's going to be
to.
located and put in jail. So I would imagine he's not going to immediately be bonded out under the circumstances and the crimes that he has committed. Okay?
I don't know. But I just want to get this restraining order done so that I can have a little peace
Yeah.
for tonight with my daughter. That's what I'm focused on.
Well, if he is arrested, in the next few hours, which I'm sure is going to happen, Leon County is very good about finding people. Okay, that's going to happen. When Brian is arrested, which will happen, he is going to probably provide another side of whatever happened today. You're aware of that?
This morning.
Yeah.
I have no idea what he's going to say.
What if he starts talking about the past, way in the past?
And
Sure.
I don't know. I have no idea what he's going to say.
No idea.
No.
What if he starts talking about? What if he starts talking about
admits
the
it.
disappearance of Mike?
I hope he admits this morning. I hope he admits what he did. If they ask him about Mike, I have no idea. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is about the Mike situation that you want to talk about. I don't want to talk about this right now.
Would you talk about it later?
I don't want to talk about this right now. I want to get this settled first.
This is settled.
It's not settled to me, though. I have not gone down. I have not filed the restraining order, and that's what is pressing on me so bad. So I understand that you want to talk about this, but this is what I want to do. This is what has to be done.
Yeah.
Today.
You got some time. We're almost done. All right. Well, you know why it's so important to talk to you about Mike. This was your husband. He simply vanished. Hopefully you still have an interest in that.
Well, again, this is my priority right now. I'm not comfortable talking about this right now. I've had an unbelievable day, and it's just all too much right now. I really want to focus on it. And I'm worried about me and my daughter and where we're going to live and how we're going to be safe. I don't even have a dog.
Yeah. Well, what we have seen, we've seen a side of Brian, that we knew was there, and it surfaced again. Okay? Because again, we've kind of tracked his history. And we also know, Mike vanishes. So.
Well, I myself have never seen anything like what I saw this morning. Never.
Do you think he's responsible for Mike's disappearance?
I do not, and I never have. I would have never married him if I thought that. I would have never wanted so bad to have children with him. I would have, in my mind and in my heart, no. David is my brother-in-law, and he was just in here talking to me about trying to get me to understand that, that my life was in danger today.
Absolutely.
And then having me to look back on that whole situation now from a different point of view. And I'm definitely going to do that. But do I believe right here in this moment that he had anything to do with that? Absolutely not.
But not.
Does that mean that I'm not going to process this and then go back? Of course I am. But I've got to process this first. And I know you understand that.
I'm going to leave on this note. I was hoping you could fill in some of the pieces of that puzzle. You haven't. We arrest Brian, he might.
This is not a strategy by the investigator. This statement simply represents the reality of the situation Denise finds herself in.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Following this interrogation, the investigators reached out to Brian's ex-wife, Catherine Thomas, and asked her to help with the investigation as a confidential source. Catherine agreed to cooperate and was a valuable contributor to the investigation because she happened to still be on good terms with Denise. Catherine told detectives that after the kidnapping incident, Denise told her, "Tell Marcus to tell Brian I'm not talking." Investigators wanted a way to verify that this statement was actually said because it likely refers to Denise wanting Brian to know that she kept quiet about Mike when speaking to police. The investigators came up with the plan of recording a phone call in which Catherine confronts Denise in regards to a subpoena. Catherine didn't actually get served a subpoena. The plan was to pretend that she did and that she would have to talk about Mike's disappearance while being under oath. This strategy will be used so that Catherine can bring up the subject of Mike's disappearance without raising Denise's suspicion.
Hang on one second. I just got in the car. I just stopped to get coffee. Okay, so I am... it's starting to mist again. This is going to be like a miserable drive. So I'm kind of freaking out about this subpoena.
I'm sure. When is it?
It's February 22nd. Here's my problem. I'm going to get upset here, but my problem is I know they're wanting to talk to me about Mike. I've always just pretended like I don't know anything. And I do know.
What do you know?
Do you remember back when all of that happened with you and Brian and Chuck in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Well, Brian called me crying figured out that you were cheating on him with Chuck. And he just told me about Mike.
What did he say? He called you upset about Chuck, and then he wanted to talk about Mike.
He was mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
And so he told me about what happened to Mike.
Well, I would love to know what happened to Mike. He never told me.
Brian told me that y'all planned it.
Planned what? Oh my God.
And Marcus showed up later that afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
you know, telling me how I would have to take this to my grave, how my life would be ruined, how I would never be able to start over.
So Marcus knew? And when you said Brian said y'all, you're talking about me and Brian or Marcus or who?
You and Brian. And
And
whenever...
that Marcus is involved? I mean, obviously, if he came and talked to you.
Here's the deal. Here is the deal. Hang on, somebody's texting me.
But yeah, that's pretty major, especially with Marcus involved.
Well, I mean, I know that you know something, Denise, because whenever I was going out to see Marcus, you're like, tell Marcus to tell Brian I'm not talking.
Yeah.
And I knew what that meant.
Well, that's why, because what they've been doing is they've been lying to me and they've been lying to them. And so they're playing everybody against each other.
Here's the thing. I don't even care about all that anymore because time has moved on. Mike is in heaven. So here is my problem. Here is like my problem. All these years, anytime anything ever came up about Mike, I just sit with my mouth shut.
This has nothing to do with you.
If I lie, whenever they ask me, do you know what happened to Mike? If I lie, then now what happens? And then when I go home, like, how do I explain that? How do I explain that I just decided to forget it?
You're saying that years later, Brian told you something, Marcus came to you, so two people came to you to talk to you about this years after it happened. That has nothing to do with you and anything that you did or anything that you didn't do. I mean, it doesn't.
Well, what am I supposed to do when they ask me?
I mean,
what am I supposed to do?
I don't know. I mean, if all this is tied to this guy that he talked to, then I'm guessing he wanted to talk to you because you were friends with us. But I mean, but again, it has nothing to do with your family. Nothing. They weren't even around then.
In the hands of the right prosecutor, this phone call is gold for two reasons. After being confronted about having a role in the murder of her ex-husband, Denise's immediate reaction is to question whether Marcus knew. This is because Denise's pact with Brian was that no one would know.
Ruined how I would never be able to start over.
So Marcus knew? And when you said Brian said y'all, you're talking about me and Brian or Marcus or who?
You and Brian. And
that Marcus is involved? I mean, obviously, if he came and talked to you.
That's a lot
what
better.
She said, it's about what she didn't say. It's unlikely that an innocent person would react with no aggression whatsoever towards an accusation of this magnitude from a close friend. Denise agrees to Catherine's suggestion that Denise said, tell Marcus to tell Brian I'm not talking. Remember, following Denise's interrogation, she stopped speaking to Marcus or Brian, which explains why Denise made this statement to Catherine.
You know something, Denise, because whenever I was going out to see Marcus, you're like, tell Marcus to tell Brian I'm not talking.
Yeah.
And I knew what that meant.
Well, that's why, because what they...
Now that Denise acknowledged that she did indeed make that statement to Catherine, it can be argued that Denise was referring to the murder of Mike Williams. Regardless if this is true or not, this can be presented to a jury as such. What followed in this investigation is exactly what the detectives predicted. Brian was arrested for the kidnapping incident, and Denise's description of the kidnapping was accurate. Denise hoped that it would end there, but to no one's surprise, it didn't. Brian was willing to testify about what happened to Mike Williams and Denise's involvement in exchange for not being sentenced to life in prison for the armed kidnapping incident. As part of the agreement, he receives immunity and cannot be prosecuted for anything he says in his confession. This was a deal of a lifetime for Brian, but prosecutors agreed to follow through with it because it was the only option available to close the case of Mike Williams. Brian was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the kidnapping as part of this agreement. The conditions were that Brian would lead law enforcement to where the remains were, and if Brian was caught lying in any part of his testimony, the entire statement can be used against him, and he can be prosecuted for first-degree murder by his own confession. Therefore, Brian has the ultimate motive to tell the truth in the following statement. We can safely assume that everything he says here is the actual truth.
Please introduce yourself to the jurors.
Brian Winchester. Another scenario that we came up with was Mike and I going on a hunting trip together, and there being an accident. Denise liked this idea because, I don't know how to word it exactly, but we could feel better about ourselves if there was a chance that he could make it out of it. I think there was even talk about, well, it'll be up to God what happens and not us. It won't be a murder. It'll be an accident. It's kind of screwed up thinking, but the plan with Mike was that I would meet him at a gas station. I met him there. I had told him that we were going to go to a secret special spot to go hunting. I was in the back of the boat driving, and he was in the front, and we headed out. We got to that area that I knew was a deep area. I basically stopped the boat and got him to stand up, and when he did, I pushed him into the water. So he was in the water. He was struggling. What I eventually realized was he was taking the waders and the jacket off. And he got those off, and that area of the lake had a lot of dead trees that come up out of the water, and there's a lot of stumps that come up out of the water. And he swam over one of those stumps and held on to it. He was panicking. I was panicking. None of this was going how I thought it was going to go. He started to yell, and I didn't know how to get out of that situation. And so I had my gun in the boat, so I loaded my gun, and I made one or two circles around, and I ended up circling closer towards him, and he was in the water, and as I passed by, I shot him in the head.
We, the jury, find as follows: as to count one of the indictment, the defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. As to count two, we, the jury, find the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Denise was originally sentenced to life in prison. The first-degree murder was later overturned in an appeal by Denise's attorney, since there was no tangible evidence in the trial that Denise helped carry out the actual commission of the murder. But the conspiracy to commit murder conviction was upheld. To put it in plain English, this means that Denise will only have to serve 30 years in prison. After spending some time in prison, she attempted to have her sentence shortened by making this statement.
I've spent most of my life caring for myself and my loved ones, but wondering why I never seem to have joy or lasting happiness. But I realize now that I only gave out of my excess, and I only served others when it was convenient for me. These years away have opened my eyes to the truth of my selfishness and pride that I did for most of my life. Thankfully, it was opened my eyes to the needs of those around me. It has been both heartbreaking and humbling to hear stories from each precious lady that I met in prison. I'm striving every day to turn this nightmare into something good. These years in prison have allowed me to find my purpose, which is serving incarcerated women and doing everything I can to help them not return to prison. I strive to honor Mike and our daughter every day by meeting the needs of the women I live with, by sharing with them my story, my failures and my bad choices, in hopes that they will make better decisions to go on and live successful lives and to be productive members of society. Today, Your Honor, I humbly request a citizen's commitment. I also make a commitment to you, Your Honor, to my family and to myself, that I will honor my extended for fulfilling my purpose, to incarcerated to the best of my ability to share the rest of my life, both inside and outside of prison. And I thank you very much for this conversation.
She was denied and will have to finish her 30-year prison sentence. Mike and Denise's daughter was awarded all assets of her late father's estate and insurance claims, and Denise kept nothing. Brian Winchester is still serving his 20-year prison sentence. Cheryl Williams, who is Mike Williams' mother, knew from the start. She never once believed that her son died in a boating accident or got eaten by alligators. She thankfully got the opportunity to witness justice being served.
When I went to the lake, God told me Mike was not in Lake Seminole. He didn't drown. He didn't get eaten by alligators. I had to find him and bring him home. For the next 17 years, I made telephone calls, put up missing person signs, compiled my notes into a book, and had people post on social media for me. I wrote 2,600 letters to the governor of Florida asking for help in finding my son. They told me Mike drowned and got eaten by alligators and there was no need for an investigation. They laughed at me and called me crazy. 9 months after Mike disappeared, his wife Denise told me if I continued to seek a criminal investigation, I would lose Ansley, my granddaughter, Mike's only child. I knew that she knew where Mike was or what happened to him. I am a fighter, not a victim. I love Ansley, but Mike was my son. I became even more determined to find the truth. Not only did Denise kill my son, she stole my granddaughter Ansley, Mike's only child. For her entire life, Ansley was raised in a house with the murderers of her father while being denied the love of her father's family. She was told that Grandmama Cheryl was crazy and would hurt her. I have had no relationship with her since she was 5.5 years old. For the rest of my life, when I try to sleep at night, I will see my son clinging to a tree stump in Lake Seminole in the dark, knowing that his best friend is trying to kill him. I hear his voice screaming for help. I wasn't there to help him. It will haunt me forever. My son's horrific death demands justice. With today's sentencing of Denise, Merrill, Williams, Winchester, I believe justice will have been served. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think I should go to Earth. I could. Wind. Ground. Hmm. 2, 3. Should have one. Technically it could. If it's falling hard. So. While it's lagging, I'm gonna change. Maybe something, I don't know.
I was doing it inappropriately. Once I
Yeah.
I swear to fulfill, to the best of my ability and judgment, this covenant. I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose steps I walk, and gladly share such knowledge as is mine with those who are to follow. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures that are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. I will remember that there is art to medicine as well as science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. I will not be ashamed to say I know not, nor will I fail to call my colleagues when the skills of another are needed for a patient's recovery. I will respect the privacy of my patients, for their problems are not disclosed to me that the world may know. Most especially must I tread with care in matters of life and death. If it is given me to save a life, all thanks, but it may be within my power to take a life. This awesome responsibility must be faced with great humbleness and awareness of my own frailty. Above all, I must not play at God. I will remember that I do not treat a fever chart, a cancerous growth, but a sick human being, whose illness may affect the person's family and economic stability. My responsibility includes these related problems if I am to care adequately for the sick. I will prevent disease whenever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. I will remember that I remain a member of society, with special obligations to my fellow human beings, those sound of mind and body, as well as the infirm. If I do not violate this oath, may I enjoy life and art, respected while I live and remember with affection thereafter. May I always act so as to preserve the finest traditions of my calling, and may I long experience the joy of healing those who seek my help. That is the Hippocratic Oath, the oath that all doctors must take in medical school before they are able to practice medicine. This oath, boiled down to its purest form, simply states that no matter what, they will help their patients to the best of their abilities. They will do everything they can to help others, and they will never, purposely, hurt anyone in their care. Doctors are meant to be the most trusted members of our society, given the nature of their jobs. They are supposed to be the best of us, people who we tell everything to, who fix us from the inside out and send us on our way, the people we trust with our darkest secrets and our most intimate moments. But, as is often the case with positions of power, people that are attracted to those jobs aren't always so virtuous and often pursue that position with the want to harm others. And today's case is no different. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading. This video, like so many others on this channel, is completely demonetized as it features footage that has been claimed by other parties. If you would like to support this channel and help me to do this full time, consider checking out the Patreon we have linked below. Today we are going to be covering the crimes of Larry Nassar, the former doctor of the USA Olympic gymnastics team that used his position as a doctor to do the unthinkable. This topic was suggested by our subscribers Amber, Chantel, and Box of Horrors, and has been incredibly difficult to research due to the breadth of the stories that have since come out about Larry. However, we tried to piece his life and crimes together in a succinct fashion while giving most of the stories that have come out their own space. If there are any other videos or topics you want me to cover, please leave them in the comments below, or feel free to email me at the email in the description box. Lawrence Gerard Nassar was born August 13, 1963, to parents Fred and Mary Nassar. He was their youngest of 5, with 3 older brothers and 1 older sister. Larry was a shy kid, never raising his voice and always keeping with himself, even in the most joyful, merry of situations. Many of his peers would state that he was awkward, never really knowing how to behave in social situations, and would often make them uncomfortable with his quiet stares. He always seemed somewhat removed, observing the world around him, but never truly participating. When Larry was in high school, he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and be an athlete. His dad had broken records when he was Larry's age for his running, and after watching his brothers and sisters succeed in their own right, he felt as if it was his obligation to follow suit. However, despite his family legacy and his father's hopes, Larry wasn't naturally athletic. In fact, he was quite the opposite. Thankfully, Larry was able to switch his father's passions out for his brothers, as his older brother Mike had become their high school's first ever student athletic trainer. Sports medicine and likewise athletic training were fledgling fields at the time Mike and Larry were in school, meaning their small school didn't have one. If an athlete was injured, they would simply have to rely on their coaches or even the school nurse, but Mike and later Larry filled the position, despite their lack of any training or medical knowledge, becoming their school's first and only athletic trainers. Whatever medical assistance Larry tried to give at this time would be that of a high school student with absolutely no medical knowledge or training, but it seemed that no one would question him. He became a resource for the sports teams on campus, and when inevitably there was a sports-related injury, the injured party would be sent to him, a young boy who could only really tell them to ice the injury and tape ankles. But being a student athletic trainer wasn't just about taping ankles, knees, and elbows. There was an added element of trust. Oftentimes, Larry would be put in charge of stretching some of his wards out, pushing on the backs of their legs so they could properly release built-up tension. He would instruct the athletes he worked with on how to eat, sit, and stretch, so that they would be in peak performance condition. And if they were injured, he'd spend as much time as he could spare with them, massaging their ligaments to exhaustion. According to his own testimony and that of his brother, they were self-taught and read a lot of books on the subject matter, which allowed for them to then touch and instruct their peers around them. In letters his family members would write on his behalf during his trial, they spoke about how seriously Larry took his job as a student athletic trainer and how he was obsessed with the position because he just wanted to help others. According to them, he would come home weeknights absolutely exhausted, having spent the later half of his day working on athletes that came to him hurt and injured. He neglected schoolwork, choosing instead to focus on the young teens his age who needed a medical professional but would settle for him. and it was in this role that Larry was first introduced to what would become his obsession, gymnasts. Larry's high school had a small competitive gymnastics team, and with the rise of popularity that gymnastics had during the 70s and 80s, the team was chock full of young women who piqued Larry's interest. Larry wasn't a particularly handsome man, and with his odd behavior, he had an exceedingly hard time getting to know women. But with his position as the athletic trainer of Farmington Hills High School, it was a completely different situation. He was in a position of power over the girls, constantly telling them what they should or shouldn't do when warming up, how to properly stretch in order to get a deeper split, and how they should practice in order to protect themselves from injuries. When he told a girl to do something, they would do it, no questions asked, and Larry loved it. There was something about gymnasts that entranced Larry. The amount of power he was given over the female gymnastics team was no more or less than he had over any other sport, but something about these girls drew him to them. What it was, we will never know, but Larry worked with the team so often that at the end of the year, he was given a Letterman jacket to indicate that he was a member of their team officially. Nasser's obsession with gymnasts wasn't something that he kept to himself, or even isolated to his own high school. In fact, Larry had gone to other gymnastics training centers to speak to the coaches and other trainers about the types of medical care gymnasts require. He hid his lust as medical intrigue and curiosity, posing as a young man who was interested in the sport from a purely scientific point of view. It was there he would network with some of the top coaches in the area, showcasing his love for the sport, and making sure to always end by offering his time and skills for free. Unfortunately, most of the coaches and instructors who Nasser met took a liking to him, and though they initially turned down his offer to assist them in their gym while he was in high school, they found his interest in the sport commendable. In the following years, Nasser would be able to turn to these men to get jobs and opportunities that put him in the position to abuse more girls. If Larry had abused his position in high school is currently unknown, but given his lack of any actual medical knowledge, it is more likely than not that on various late nights he had working with members of the team, he convinced them to let him touch and massage them inappropriately, with the understanding that he was only doing it to ease their pain, or to test a new treatment he had just read about. In fact, because of his sheer lack of medical training, any time he would have placed his hands on another party would have been considered inappropriate, but at the very least, Larry was the same age as the girls he was working on. Larry's lust for young gymnasts didn't subside after he graduated high school, but he quickly became aware that if he wanted to continue to be around them, he would need to get an actual education. No longer could he come to gyms as a curious outsider who swore they were simply interested in the sport. He would have to take steps to make himself look more legitimate.
That's
Larry was
disgusting.
accepted into kinesiology program at the University of Michigan, which focuses on the study of human movement. After successfully completing his undergraduate program, Larry enrolled in medical school at Michigan State. However, one thing would get in the way of his degree, and it was surprisingly the thing he was getting the degree for: gymnasts. After Nasser had received his degree in kinesiology, he once again went back to the gymnast training centers that he would frequent in high school, this time with a degree that said that he knew how to properly assess and treat the young girls who worked out 6 days a week there. These gyms, despite turning out some of the best gymnasts in the nation, were small and humble, with only a few trainers on staff. Like he had when he was still in high school, he offered his services as an athletic trainer for free, setting himself up in the back room of these gyms, and at times simply observing the girls as they trained in order to, quote-unquote, better assess their needs. Now that he had a degree and some basic medical knowledge they could benefit from, gyms jumped at the chance to have Larry work with them. Having any sort of medical staff or trainer on site was a huge score, and further legitimized their establishment. Gyms would boast about how they now had a dedicated trainer on site who would help with any serious injuries or ailments. Never mind the fact that he was still very much not a doctor, and shouldn't have been touching these young girls at all. No one seemed concerned with the fact that this man wanted to be around these girls so desperately, so much so that he was turning down actual jobs that paid actual money. Instead, they once again brushed it off as an academic intrigue and love for the sport. It is also said that despite Larry only being an athletic trainer at the time, and having no medical license to speak of, he somehow managed to write prescriptions for the athletes he treated, often supplying girls with painkillers and other drugs at the slightest injury. When these teams would go to competitions, Larry would join them, choosing to pay his own way and rack up a considerable amount of debt to help the girls before the events. He traveled across the country with the teams, choosing to stay in the same hotel and on the same floor, just in case they needed further treatment, and was on call to them 24/7. The competition directors and other coaches also loved Larry, as he would make himself and his expertise available not only to the team he came with, but to everyone there. He would set up a small training table and medical station where he would work on the girls in some corner or hallway at the venue, and if they wanted, he'd look them over for free, fixing their ailments so they could get back to work. Again, he did this all for free, never once asking these competitions or the gyms he worked at for payment, possibly because he had only studied kinesiology and not medicine. He wasn't a doctor, and far from it. Asking to be paid might have caused someone to actually check his background and certifications. He had a substantial amount of knowledge revolving around the human body and how to properly get it competition ready. But more than that, he was attuned to how to fix things that had been broken. He used this knowledge to subtly talk down to the people around him, which in turn led them to thinking he had more medical knowledge than he did. He would often sprinkle in medical terms into places they didn't necessarily belong, with the idea that if he carried himself as a doctor and an expert, most people would believe that this is what he was. Because of his subtle but effective manipulation, most people believed him to be just a kind trainer who was passionate about the sport of gymnastics. The girls who Larry treated, likewise, seemed to love him because he was usually the only adult presence in their life that wasn't outright overtly abusive, save their parents. The world of competitive gymnastics was cutthroat, with coaches heavily regimenting girls' eating schedules, working them to exhaustion, and berating them every single day. These girls were made to fear their bodies changing, putting on muscle, and eating by the adults around them, and nearly every day they were told that they were fat, ugly, and pathetic. There have been multiple exposés done on the toxic culture of gymnastics, with multiple independent reports citing that almost all athletes in the elite level of sport have some form of eating disorder, have self-harmed in some way, and deal with some form of body dysmorphia from the verbal abuse that is thrown their way. In multiple instances, owners of these gyms would physically push these young girls under the age of 18 to their breaking point, forcing their bodies to bend beyond what is humanly possible, causing irreparable damage to them. Coaches were feared and not loved. Training was grueling, never fun. And in multiple instances, former Olympic-level athletes have spoken about purposely injuring themselves so as to not have to do gymnastics anymore. Standing next to the coaches, Larry looked like a saint. He would present himself as kind, always wanting to help, and oftentimes would give the girls small candies to gain their favor. He seemed like the only adult present, save for maybe their parents, who would go out of his way to treat them with any sort of kindness, leading them to outright trusting him, and at times seeking him out. This was a disguise on Larry's part. The girls would already implicitly trust him based on the authority he had in the gym. He was their on-staff doctor and physical trainer. Not listening to him could mean further injury or hurt. But just getting the girls to trust him wasn't enough. They would have to like him, and have to know that he was a good guy who cared for them. He was the guy who would sneak them chocolates when they were crying. He was the guy who would wrap their injuries so they could continue to train. And he was the guy who would give them massages in their intimate areas, because he just wanted to help them. It was of the utmost importance that the girls around him liked him and trust him implicitly, so even they wouldn't know what he had done to them. To the girls he would assault in his small, windowless office, it would seem impossible that nice guy Larry Nasser could be hurting them when he was the only person who was being kind to them. Larry presented himself as the lesser of two evils, and for some of the girls who he would examine, it would take years for them to even realize that he had taken advantage of them, with some of his victims even defending him against the allegations before realizing they too had been victimized. Larry was providing multiple gyms with free athletic training, traveling to competitions on his own dime, and working with plenty of private clients, all the while he was in medical school. Larry's insane schedule and his need to be around minors would prove to be too much for him, and in his first semester of medical school, he failed biochemistry. Thinking little of it and still not wanting to change his ways, Larry retook the course in his next semester, while still working closely with multiple gymnasts. And once again, he failed. Because of his failure to pass biochemistry, Larry was now in danger of failing out of medical school. But Larry already had friends in high places and had learned how to network his way out of issues. Using the connections he had gained through his years of working with some of the top gymnast trainers in the area, he was able to convince the school board to give him another shot and exchange his original 4-year plan with a 5-year plan. The board agreed to this, with the added caveat that Larry wasn't allowed to step foot in another gym until he had properly graduated. They had determined he had been unfocused with his gymnastics work, and only should be allowed back into these gyms when he had a degree. Despite agreeing to their one rule, he did not even attempt to follow it. Larry continued to be a constant presence at the gyms in his area, setting up small physical therapy offices in the windowless hallways in the back of buildings. He would be there at all hours of the day, willing to help anyone who so much as stubbed a toe, offering massages and pelvic floor alignments that he swore would ease their pain. According to Larry, there were pressure points in the vagina that could send blood to various parts of the body, thus increasing the rate of healing. He would tell this to girls who would hurt their ankles, backs, necks, and everything and anything, and the girls would believe him, because he was their doctor after all. At the same time, his devotion to practicing medicine on underage gymnasts, despite not being a licensed doctor, was paying off, as he had been able to get himself a highly coveted position as an athletic trainer with USA Gymnastics. He had somehow been able to network his way into this position before he was able to practice medicine, and was now part of an elite group of people who trained the upper echelon of athletes. Despite Larry going back on his word and continuing to work as an athletic trainer in multiple gyms, he was somehow able to graduate from Michigan State and officially become a doctor of osteopathic medicine. With this doctorate under his belt, he had everything he needed to climb the ranks of the athletic training program. Nasser began to work in multiple different positions, for multiple different organizations, in multiple different capacities, consistently rising up the medical ranks until he was the absolute authority when it came to taking care of young gymnasts. He became the gymnastic team physician and assistant professor at Michigan State University. He also worked at the Karoli Ranch, which was a training camp for Olympic-level young gymnasts that didn't allow parents to be present, and he served as the national medical coordinator for USA Gymnastics. Nasser was a well-respected, well-liked man with a loving family who seemingly could do no wrong. But just like so many other people we've covered on this channel, Nasser's outward appearance and personality was meant to disguise the man he really was, and it would take multiple decades, 5 different investigations, and multiple women speaking out against him for his facade to finally fall. Before we go any further, the next section of this video is going to include details of how Larry Nasser sexually assaulted and molested hundreds of girls during his time working as an athletic trainer. If that is not something you are prepared to take in, please pause the video now and go to the description below. Timestamps are provided to skip to other parts of the video, like the interviews he did with law enforcement, his trial, and more. Any section of the video that starts with a year is going to be an in-depth look into what he was doing and how he was using his position to harm others. If you feel the need to click off the video now, please do so for your own mental well-being. As previously asserted, Larry Nasser had been working as an athletic instructor since high school, so it's impossible to know how he truly started abusing the position for his own sexual gratification. His earliest publicly known sexual abuses occurred in 1990, when Larry was 27. Her name was Trinea Gongsar, and she was 10. Larry had been working at the gym that Trinea's mother, Dawn, had started taking her daughter to. Trinea was an enthusiastic little girl who was extremely talented, but like other gymnasts her age, would often injure herself trying to do the complex tricks being taught to her. Her ankles, knees, back, and hips were seemingly always slightly hurt, and Larry, the 27-year-old medical student, had just started to see her for her injuries. Before she would start her sessions for the day, Trinea would go to see Larry, who would help stretch her out in ways that wouldn't further aggravate her injuries. He would wrap her ankles and knees at times and send her back into the gym. But Larry's dedication to treating the girls didn't end when he went home. Instead, Larry provided his phone number to multiple girls and their parents, letting them know if they ever needed further treatment, he would make himself available. Larry had turned his modest college apartment into a makeshift clinic where he began to see the girls outside the gym. It was in his apartment where he would begin to molest Trinea, under the guise of treating her back and hip pain. He would have Trinea lay out on his training table, stretch out her body, and begin to perform what he called vaginal manipulations. According to Larry, he could realign her back and hips through her vagina, which would ease her back pain. He also would state that there are many pressure points inside the vagina that could send blood to various parts of the body and accelerate healing. This was, of course, untrue. He started treating Trinea when she was just 10 years old, in his apartment, and would continue this treatment for years. Because of her age and his position in her life as a doctor and family friend, it didn't occur to Trinea that what he had done was anything near sexual assault. In her mind, he was too nice of a guy to do that, and he made it seem like a legitimate medical procedure to her. It wouldn't be until decades later that Trinea would understand what he had done to her, and how he had molested her when she was only 10 years old. At the same time Larry was molesting Gongsar, he was likewise molesting other members of their gym. Sarah Turisti was a 14-year-old when she started being molested by Larry, when a previous rib cage injury started giving her pause. Larry used the injury as a pretense to, on multiple occasions, rub ice on her bare chest and breasts. In at least one instance, the owner of the gym, John Getter, who later would also be accused of sexual assault as well as human trafficking, walked in on Larry's treatments and commented on the size of Sarah's breasts. Because someone had come in during the treatment and had seen what Larry had been doing, Sarah thought it must have been normal, that what he was doing had actual medical backing, but it still made her uncomfortable. On multiple occasions, after he finished rubbing ice on her chest, he would angrily have her get dressed, refusing to look at her. Turisti would recall that after, there was always a musty smell in the room, a smell she now recognizes as being semen. As time went on, Larry got more and more confident in his actions. He began to realize that most of the parents and coaches around him relied on him solely for their medical advice, and no one was going out of their way to fact-check him. Most of the parents were already spending thousands of dollars each month on gymnastics training, and couldn't afford to go make outside doctor's appointments. Their only point of contact with any medical professional was with Larry, and if he could dress up sexual assault with enough medical verbiage, they wouldn't know the difference. Who were they to say that what he was doing wasn't a type of physical therapy? He was the expert after all. If he stated that he could fix someone's back by massaging their genitals, they would simply believe him. He was so completely trusted by the people around him that most girls didn't recognize what he was doing as molestation or feel at all uncomfortable. It also seemed that Larry got off on the fact that he was so trusted and valued in these girls' lives, and that their parents would invite him over for holiday meals and get him Christmas presents. After a bit, simply molesting the girls when they came into his office or home wasn't enough. He created a ruse where he told a small number of parents at the gym that he needed to use some of the girls for a school assignment. He asked if they would be able to drop the girls off at his apartment, to which they readily agreed. One of the girls asked to be a part of this research was Sarah Klein, and she was just 12 years old. He told Sarah that he wanted to compare the flexibility of cold muscles to warm muscles, with the idea that warm muscles would be more flexible. He then asked Sarah to do the splits, which she did. He then crouched behind her and measured with a ruler how far off her crotch was from the ground. After he had taken down some notes, he then led Sarah to the bathroom, where a warm bath had already been drawn for her. He instructed Sarah to get undressed and sit in the bath for 15 minutes. This was, of course, so her muscles would warm up. Larry would make a show out of not wanting to see her naked, and for the entire 15 minutes would leave Sarah in the bathroom with a small egg timer left on the toilet. When the timer would go off, he would come back into the room, ask Sarah to get redressed, and then have her go back into the living room, where she would once again go down into the splits. He once again measured the distance, and then told her, for a reward for helping him, he would give her a massage, and then would assault her. Olympian Jamie Dancher would also go on to be assaulted by Larry in 1994. According to Jamie, she was just 12 years old when she started to see Larry, and the abuse continued over a 6-year period of time. She originally came to see Larry for lower back pain, and like he usually did, he found some way to sell the fact that there was a vaginal
Jesus fucking Christ.
According to Dancher, he would
This
put
is
his
fucking
ungloved fingers
disgusting.
inside of
This.
her. He would
Oh
then
God.
push her hips back until he heard a pop. It's upsetting but important to note that when Larry would assault these girls, he did so without gloves, and usually without lotion. He would try to stimulate the girls and use that as lubrication, because in his mind, that was akin to consent. Him choosing not to use gloves is incredibly important to state, because in medical scenarios, when someone is being properly examined by a professional, gloves and sterilization are key. No industry professional would work without them, as it could lead to vaginal infections and misunderstandings. But because Larry wasn't actually trying to help the girls he was seeing, he would never wear them. This then led to multiple girls being diagnosed with UTIs, bladder infections, and more. By 1996, Larry had assaulted tens of young girls, all of which had yet to turn 18. In some cases, Larry would record treatments he would give to these girls, stating that they would be used to properly illustrate his techniques, and were in no way meant to be sexual. But he was far from finished. In fact, he had just started.
Oh, no fucking war.
John Getter was the owner of the Twist Stars USA Gymnastics Center, where Larry worked out for more than a quarter of a century. He and Larry grew up quite close when they met at the Great Lakes Gymnastics Club, and a lot of the opportunities that were afforded to Larry were gained through his friendship with Getter. In most reports about Larry Nassar, it becomes obvious that the reason Nassar was able to rise ranks and gain more power and influence in the USA Gymnastics arena was because he was not alone in abusing girls in their care. While he might be the most known predator, he was far from the only one. John Getter, likewise, also abused gymnasts who came to see him, usually the same gymnasts who are also being abused by Nassar. We already established that Getter entered the room at least one time while Larry was inappropriately touching and massaging a 14-year-old's breasts, and made a comment about their size. However, another woman would come forward and state that while she was being penetrated by Nassar's fingers in his office, Getter was likewise in the room, talking and making jokes. Another former gymnast would come forward later and state that in one instance, Getter had followed her into the locker room after practice, thrown her up against a wall, and sexually assaulted her. He then told her to kill herself because she had done such a bad job at practice. She was just 14. Separately, Michaela Thrush spoke about how Getter likewise assaulted her, and in a statement directed at John, said, "Do you remember the time you got so mad at me that you threw me on top of the low bar, ruptured lymph nodes in my neck, gave me a black eye, and tore the muscles in my stomach? Well, you did, and that ended my career. You told me to kill myself not just once, but many other times, and unfortunately, I let you get the best of me, because after you ended my career, I tried." To say that John was abusive would be an understatement. He made an environment that was so toxic, so absolutely ripe with fear, that none of the girls who were put in his care felt at all comfortable to tell him about how Larry had been assaulting them. They felt that while what Larry did was wrong, he was at least nice to them, and how Getter behaved was not unlike other gymnastics centers in the nation. While researching Getter and some of his horrific teaching methods, we found a plethora of other coaches replicating them and stating that he was their direct inspiration. For years, and it seems even now, mental, physical, and psychological abuse were just part of the sport. In 2021, Getter would be brought up on 24 felony charges, including 14 counts of human trafficking and forced labor resulting in injury, 6 counts of human trafficking of a minor for forced labor, 1 count each of continuing criminal enterprise, first-degree sexual conduct, second-degree sexual conduct, and lying to an officer during a violent crime investigation. The last charge related to Getter lying to an officer in regards to his knowledge about Larry Nassar. Mere hours after being charged, Getter was found dead in his car at a rest area off of Interstate 96. He had killed himself. As we go along, more men like Getter who abuse their position over these young athletes will make themselves known, and it will become all the more clear how for decades Nassar was allowed to be left to his own devices. In 1996, Larry was named the National Medical Coordinator for USA Gymnastics, ahead of the Olympics taking place that year in Atlanta. The next year, he was hired as the team physician and an assistant professor at Michigan State University. Larry came across to those around him as professional, if not a bit shy. He had once again carefully crafted a demeanor in order to camouflage his incendiary actions, as no one would believe that shy, helpful doctor and volunteer Larry Nassar would ever do anything to hurt anyone. His affiliation with USA Gymnastics and the Olympics further cemented his reputation, and as we will show, caused multiple accusers to be outright turned away and shamed for trying to make complaints about what he had done. The first recorded instance of a woman complaining about Nasser at MSU happened just a year into his tenure there, when a then 16-year-old Larissa Boyce came to see him after hurting her back in the youth gymnastic program at the university. When alone in his office for appointments, Nasser would give Boyce vaginal massages once a week. It wasn't until a coach had pulled her aside when she was late to practice and asked her what he had been doing during their sessions when red flags were raised. At which point, the coach encouraged her to report Nasser to the university's gymnastic coach, Kathy Klages. Kathy Klages was a renowned gymnastics coach who had learned everything she knew from her mentor, John Getter. She likewise was also well aware of Larry before he was hired as the team physician, and was friends with both men who would later be charged for their crimes. Though Klages had a softer touch than Getter when it came to training, and never seemed to physically assault any of her gymnasts, her ties to him and his teaching methods meant that Kathy was more than willing to turn a blind eye, especially if it meant further accolades for herself. Much like the case with Jeffrey Epstein, you simply couldn't be around Getter without hearing the abuse he would throw at the girls, and that was something she was more than comfortable with. When Larissa Boyce entered her office and told her what Larry had been doing to her every time she saw him for the 4 weeks, Kathy defended Nasser, telling Boyce she must have misunderstood what was happening. Larry was a good guy. He had a family, he volunteered at high schools in the area, and he donated his time to helping girls just like Larissa. Why would he risk it all just to assault her? He wouldn't, Kathy stated. She clearly didn't get what was happening and was too immature to know the difference between a medical procedure and sexual assault. Larissa remained steadfast in her claim, saying that Larry had inappropriately touched her, going so far as to say he fingered her. Kathy began to get upset and, in a move that was seemingly meant to embarrass Larissa, called the team into her small office and asked them if Nasser had ever done the same to any of them. Klages made the entire team aware of Boyce's assault and the details therein, clearly expecting that no one else would speak up if Nasser had done the same to them. However, another team member who was 14 years old at the time confirmed to Klages that she had also been molested. She stated that Nasser had done the same thing to her multiple times over, and it made her feel uncomfortable. After she had come forward, Klages excused the rest of the team, and then verbally berated both girls, shaming them for trying to ruin a good man's life because they couldn't understand that he was trying to help them. She ended by telling both of the girls that she, quote-unquote, could file the complaint, but there was going to be serious consequences if she did, for both Nasser and the girls. Both girls felt humiliated and stupid, and ultimately didn't file a formal complaint. Klages, for her part, states that now she doesn't remember any such exchange ever happening, but did note that after their conversation in her office, she made Nasser aware of what had happened. 2 years after Boyce had been shamed into silence, another athlete would come forward to their coach about what Larry had done to them. Christy Aschenbach was a track and cross-country runner who had hurt her right hamstring earlier in the year. She had been to 15 other medical specialists in the area before she had been referred to Nasser. She went on one visit, and much like he had been doing for almost a full decade at this point, he molested her. He told her that he had his own way of treating people, and that he needed to go inside of her to manipulate her pelvic floor in order to help with any problem she might be having. He insisted that most female problems could be fixed with his method, which is absolutely idiotic. However, because of his reputation as an Olympic doctor, she was inclined to trust him. But when he touched her, she knew something was wrong. After she left the appointment, she called her parents and told them what had happened. They told her she needed to speak to someone to report what had happened. With that in mind, she reached out to the assistant coach for the cross-country team, Kelly Bird, who replied, "He's an Olympic doctor. He should know what he's doing." Kelly's outright dismissal of Christie's claims were enough for her not to want to pursue anything further. She was ashamed and ultimately embarrassed. Much like Kathy Klage before her, Kelly states she doesn't remember anything like that occurring. She was not connected to Larry in any way, and currently states that she would have reported any assault had she been aware of it occurring. A year after, another woman would come forward. Tiffany Thomas Lopez. Tiffany was a softball player at MSU who had developed lower back pain. She was likewise referred to Nasser, who immediately began to assault her. She felt incredibly uncomfortable and would often ditch her appointments with Nasser, giving various excuses as to why she couldn't make it. Her back pain only got worse as time went on, and while at a softball tournament, Tiffany asked one of the team trainers, Liana Hayden, if she would help her. Desperate for any kind of relief, she told Liana about what Nassar would do to her in their sessions, and how he said it would cure her back pain, and Liana was revolted. She immediately told Tiffany she had been assaulted, and that there was no medical reason for him to penetrate her. Liana told her to report Nasser to Destiny Tishnor-Hawk, who was another athletic trainer at MSU. After the tournament was over, Taylor did just that, but was told by Destiny that they could make a complaint, but what Nasser had done, in fact, had been a medical treatment, and that she was making a mountain out of a molehill. She assured Lopez that Nasser was a very accredited doctor who knew what he was doing, and if she wanted to make a complaint, she would have to be okay with ruining a man's life. Because of Destiny's assurance, Tiffany dropped her complaint, once again feeling embarrassed and stupid because the people who were paid to protect her had told her that she had simply misunderstood. 2 years after Tiffany had spoken to Liana about what Larry had done, another girl, Jennifer Rude Bedford, made a similar complaint to her. She talked about how he had assaulted her when she came to see him for treatment, and Hayden, unlike with Tiffany, told her not to make a complaint. She told her that it would make her look bad to file a complaint against him, seeing as he was doing nothing wrong. She would look like a liar who was crying rape, and if she wasn't 100% certain that it was a medical procedure, she should let it go. In response to claims that they had actively lied and discouraged girls from coming forward and making complaints against Nasser, Hayden, currently working as an athletic trainer at MSU, declined to comment. However, in the 2014 investigation into Nasser, when Tishnor-Hawk was interviewed, she stated that she had never had a complaint about him in 17 years. 3 years later, in another interview for another investigation into Nasser's misconduct, she stated once more she had never had an athlete complain about Nasser. For every girl who complained and came forward, there were more who kept quiet. In numerous instances, other girls recalled talking to each other about Larry, who they sometimes referred to as the crotch doctor, and how he would touch them. If someone began to question the efficacy of what he was doing, another party would chime in, shutting down discussion. It was unfathomable that his pelvic floor adjustments were sexual to them, because that would mean they had been assaulted, and some of them were not in a position to emotionally handle that. Gymnasts who had been assaulted by him became his biggest advocates and defenders, stating that any girl who thought that he was doing something wrong just didn't understand his procedure. It would take years for these girls to come to terms with what he had done, and what had been done to them, and how thoroughly they had been groomed. While Nasser was making a name for himself on the MSU campus, he continued to grow bolder. He began to bring his work home with him, literally, setting up a workstation in the basement of his house that he shared with his new wife, and at times having gymnasts come over for treatments. He had been able to make molesting girls into his full-time job, and he had even been able to do so in front of their parents. He felt as if he could talk himself out and get away with anything, and he was pretty much right. Kyle Stevens wasn't a client, she wasn't involved in gymnastics, and she didn't know Nasser as a doctor. Instead, he was a cherished family friend, who she would see every Sunday night for dinner. Usually Kyle, her parents, her brother, and the Nassers would eat dinner together. Afterwards, Kyle and her brother would go to their basement to play and watch movies. It was here where Larry would begin to assault her. It started on Sunday after dinner. Larry had come downstairs to check on her and her brother and asked if they wanted to play hide and seek. Both kids agreed, and Larry volunteered to be the seeker. Kyle ran into one of the many rooms in the basement and clumsily hid. It didn't take long for Larry to find her, but he pretended not to. He closed the door to the room she was in, pretended to search, and then, without warning, took his penis out and began to masturbate. Kyle was 6 and had no idea what he was doing. She didn't know if he knew that she was there, so she sat uncomfortable until he finished. After, he cleaned himself up and stated that if she ever wanted to touch it, to let him know. After the first time he exposed himself to her, this would become a weekly occurrence. He would give her massages, have her sit on his lap, and would often touch himself in front of her. She was unsure about what to do, but when she was in the 6th grade in 2004, she decided she was going to tell her parents. However, they didn't believe her. Kyle's parents brought her to see a psychiatrist at MSU, Dr. Gary Stolik. He interrogated her and made her feel that she had done something wrong. He treated her like a hostile witness.
Oh
When
my
she began
god.
to retreat inwards, he declared to her parents that she had simply lied. After her appointment, Kyle's mother and father spoke to Nasser, telling him what she had done, and he, of course, outright denied the abuse. He sat across from her and told her that if something like what she was alleging ever really happened to her, she needed to tell someone and be honest. Her parents apologized to Larry for their daughter's claim and maintained that they didn't believe her. They would continue to go to the house every week, but after that, the abuse stopped. Kyle's parents would later realize that she had in fact not been lying. They would try to repair their relationship, but
It was
unfortunately,
true, you
Kyle's father
fucking...
would end up killing himself, in part due to what had happened to his
No.
daughter and how he had failed to protect her. Dr. Stolik, who had outright called Kyle a liar, worked tirelessly to defend his MSU co-worker and would later state that he, like Kathy Clage and Destiny Tishnor-Hawk, had no memory of this encounter with the Stevens family. He would also state that when he had retired, he had destroyed most of his records, which is why there was no physical proof of this conversation ever happening. At this point, Larry felt truly untouchable. He had molested girls in front of his employer, he had touched girls in front of their parents, and he had been defended against multiple complaints by other staff members at MSU, and he had just effectively convinced a girl's parents that he hadn't molested her, even though he had while they were under his roof, no less. Whatever consequence he'd previously been fearful of was no more, and he would only get worse. One thing that Larry's defenders would often state is that his victims simply didn't understand what he was trying to do. They would downplay his touches and imply that his victims had dirty minds for even thinking that an adult man inserting his fingers into them was inappropriate. He was a doctor, after all, working to help them, and he got absolutely no sexual gratification from what he did. Just because he touched you didn't mean he enjoyed it, they would say. However, that defense would fly directly out of the window in 2004, when Larry solicited and received child pornography for the first time. When this fact was eventually revealed in court, every naysayer immediately changed their tune, and hundreds of girls realized that how he had touched them had been in fact inappropriate. He had just groomed them into thinking otherwise. At the same time as him buying thousands of images of child pornography, Larry began to abuse a 17-year-old girl who was dealing with scoliosis. Her name was Brianne Randall Gay, and after her second appointment with Larry, she went to the police. Brianne detailed what he had done to her, how he had massaged her back the way he did in her first session, then began to massage her butt. According to her report, he then moved his hand to her crotch and began to massage her vagina, telling her that this would relieve her tension. He then inserted his finger into her for about 20 minutes. After he had finished there, he moved on and began to massage her neck. He stayed there for less than a minute before maneuvering his hands under her clothing and massaging her breast. He once again assured her that touching her chest would relieve all the tension in her back and butt, and continued to fondle her for 15 minutes. After the appointment, Brianne told her mother, and they went to the police and made a report on September 17, 2004. Unfortunately, much like the other times Nasser's malpractice had been reported, this report and its subsequent investigation were closed, as Larry was once again able to explain away his abuse as being strictly medical, and had even gone so far as to show the police a PowerPoint presentation he had made himself about the special kind of physical therapy he did. The following photos are that PowerPoint presentation as it was documented in the police report. Pause to read if you would like. Officer McCready, who was assigned to the case, interviewed Larry. He was the one he had presented the PowerPoint presentation to. According to him, as stated on the official police report, Dr. Nasser advised me that he had indeed touched Brianne Randall in the perineum, applying pressure with his fingers as he did so. He further indicated that this procedure is a medical technique known as sacrotuberous ligament release. Dr. Nasser explained that the sacrotuberous ligament goes through the pelvic region, and in order to relieve lower back pain as well as upper leg pain, which the complainant Brianne Randall was experiencing due to her scoliosis, he was required to touch said region. He indicated that the hamstring is affected, as well as the lower back, when this area is palpated. Dr. Nasser went on to say that this technique has been published in medical journals, instructing the same are available to physicians throughout the United States. He agreed to provide me with a PowerPoint presentation in which the medical procedure is explained in detail. After that one interview, McCready closed the case, informing Brianne and her mother that it had been a pretty straightforward medical procedure and she had misunderstood. After Nasser's crimes were revealed, and it was discovered that the police had been contacted multiple times about what he had done, the Meridian Township Police Department launched a full investigation as to why nothing materialized after this complaint. The reason the investigation found was that the police had simply taken Nasser's word for it. In response to the question of if the investigation had consulted any other medical expert about Larry's procedures, the answer was no, with McCready stating that he believed Nasser's lies. He then stated that he couldn't just walk into a doctor's office and ask them questions about something like this, and went further to state that it was not his responsibility to do so, but rather that would fall on a prosecutor if this was taken to court, which it couldn't have been because McCready also didn't submit the case to the prosecution office. Once again, Larry felt untouchable. Using just a PowerPoint presentation, he had been able to sell a police officer on the fact that he could treat back pain in women by molesting them, nearly no questions asked. Larry truly felt as if there was nothing that could stop him, and would continue to molest every girl that he could, knowing that he was protected on all sides. As time went on, Nasser continued to molest nearly every girl he saw, and on the road to the 2012 London Olympics, Nasser made it a point to molest every young girl who was on the team, including Michaela Maroney. Michaela had met Nasser at a training camp when she was just 13 years old, and he had begun molesting her almost immediately. He told her that his massages were meant to help her feel good and perform better, and she believed him, but always felt like something was wrong. In 2011, Michaela was traveling with the Olympic gymnastics team in Tokyo when Nasser took his molestation further. While on the plane, Nasser had given her a sleeping pill. However, by the time their flight had landed, the effects had not yet worn off. She was dizzy and completely out of sorts, and somehow Nasser was able to bring her back to his own room. Michaela doesn't remember everything that happened to her, but when she came to, she was naked and he was pleasuring himself. Michaela and the rest of the team, who went by the moniker the Fierce Five, all felt as if something was wrong with how he was treating them, but they didn't have the exact words for what it was. Like Larry had counted on, the girls he was assaulting were young and inexperienced. They had no concept of what a sexual touch was, and had been groomed into believing that Larry was doing nothing out of the ordinary. What they did know was that they just didn't like how he was touching them. The next day, Michaela told the rest of the team what had happened to her the night before, while the team made their way back to their hotel. Despite stating he had no idea what Larry had been doing, John Geddert was also on the bus when this statement was made. The girls had just finished training for the day, and Michaela loudly declared that Larry had molested her the night before. She went on to describe in graphic detail what happened, and according to those present, fellow Olympian Alicia Sacramone scolded her and told her never to say something like that again. Michaela hoped that by speaking out about what had happened that someone would stop it, that Geddert would tell them that he had no idea and would pursue an investigation. But nothing of the kind happened. Instead, the girls began to talk amongst themselves, bonding over their shared trauma. Some still believed that what Larry was doing wasn't actually assault, that their bodies were sending them weird signals over a very common medical procedure. They didn't want to believe that this man they had known for as long as they did had been assaulting them the entire time, and pointedly shut down any conversation that even suggested what he was doing was wrong. Amanda Tomashow was 24 when she made an appointment to see Larry Nasser for hip pain. Her sister was a regular patient of his, and due to his reputation, she figured he would be best suited to help her with her sports injury, and like he had with every other female patient he saw, he molested her. Amanda was not like the young gymnast that he had groomed for years though. She knew about his reputation, but didn't have anything to lose by telling him to stop. And the moment he inserted a finger into her, she told him to stop. When he tried to convince her that he needed to massage her breasts in order to fix her hip, she told him no. When he refused to listen to her, she forcefully pushed him off of her, something that no girl on record had been able to do prior. Amanda got redressed, wanting to leave, but Nasser blocked the door, refusing to let her out until she scheduled a follow-up appointment. He tried to defuse the situation and maintained that nothing he had done was out of the ordinary, but she knew better. She worried about her sister, and if she had also been touched this way. Wanting to leave, Amanda finally relented, scheduling an appointment that she immediately canceled. Amanda made the decision to file a formal complaint about what had been done to her the same day, realizing that she wouldn't be able to live with herself if something like she'd been put through happened to someone else. She called another doctor who worked at MSU and told him what she had gone through, struggling not to get sick the entire call. He assured her he would file a report with the right people and she would be hearing more soon. She also made a report to the MSU Police Department. The first report resulted in a Title IX investigation done by the school. Christine Moore was the woman who was placed in charge of the investigation, and once the details were relayed to her, she met up with Amanda and interviewed her once more. According to Amanda, the meeting was incredibly reassuring, with Moore seeming horrified at what was being told to her. Amanda recalled feeling heard, like they were taking her experience and the complaint seriously, which was all she had hoped for. On the same day as Moore and Amanda's meeting, Larry was being interviewed by Detective Valerie O'Brien, who had been assigned to look into the case for the MSU police force. Once more, Larry came armed with his PowerPoint presentation about his very particular type of treatment and why it wasn't sexual assault. However, this time, Larry was confident in himself and barely took the complaint seriously. He had already tricked the police once before and felt so confident in his ability to sell sexual assault as a real medical procedure that he themed this PowerPoint presentation after the show Star Trek, titling it Pelvic Floor, Where No Man Has Gone Before. To him, this investigation was a joke. The following is the interview between Larry and O'Brien.
So I'm Valerie O'Brien. I'm a lieutenant back in our detective bureau. Obviously, it's been told you that I was going to contact you.
Someone was. I didn't know who or what, but I thank goodness because I couldn't imagine that I was waiting. You know, it's like
right.
Somebody call.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I've asked you to come in here voluntarily because this is under investigation.
Right.
So obviously, I need to find out from you,
Right.
from your perception, your side of things, what happened.
Right, exactly.
I've got to record it in here
That's
just
fine.
because that's what we do for interviews.
Right.
So just so you know, it is recorded.
Right.
But we do that for most people that we bring in here. At any time you feel you want to get the heck out of here, you can get out, walk out. My feelings won't be hurt. Okay. So I guess what I'm looking for is first, do you have a driver's license? Just to fully identify you.
Oh, yeah.
I recognize you by face, but
No worries. Can you take it out?
thank you.
Do you need my faculty card?
Nope, that's okay. And this is your current address still?
Larry presents himself as nervous, which anyone would be in an interrogation like this one. He is hyper-responsive to her statements, agreeing before she has even finished her sentences, and leaning forward towards her, with his eyes mostly locked on hers, looking for reassurance. However, in moments of silence, when she writes down his information, he turns to his computer. Most of Larry's computers had contained some form of child porn on them, and he had willingly brought it into the police interrogation. He had prepared a slideshow to validate the decades worth of sexual assaults he had done, and he themed it around his favorite show, the facade that Larry has created of the meek, empathetic guy who wanted nothing more than to explain himself was entirely fake. Larry was incredibly comfortable in this space, and even when he appeared to be flustered, he was very much in control. This will only become more evident later on, when he would be interrogated 2 years later.
And then, do you have a cell phone that you prefer to be contacted at,
Yeah.
as opposed to me? When I called the house, I didn't say where I was from.
Oh, that's my wife's number.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely fine.
I didn't know, so I just,
If I phone, if no one's there, my cell is.
All right, and then I had sent you an email too, which you obviously can disregard.
Oh,
So,
okay. I'm not good at emails.
no, that's all right. Sometimes some people are, and sometimes some people aren't. So the reason for the delay in me contacting you is because obviously you know the mandatory reporting protocols on campus. No? Okay. So basically what happens is that it sounds like there was a complaint made over at MSU Sports Medicine, which triggers some mandatory reporting protocols. So what happens is the Office for Inclusion is a mandatory reporter here to the police department. So they contacted me, at which time I had to wait for the person who was going to file the report to get back into town because they were out of town. So I was able to meet with her today, which is why the delay, so I apologize for that. So obviously a little bit stressful for you because you're wondering. And so what I also do is I ask Office for Inclusion to kind of hold off, so to speak, because I like to put any type of police investigation in front of an administrative investigation, but obviously you probably feel the other is more important because it's affecting your employment.
It's bull fucking shit, man.
You know, it's like I want to make sure that this gets resolved so that there's better understanding. Okay, that to me, everything else is irrelevant. It's really, I feel like horrid that she would feel that way. And that's why I'm like, I gotta get some resolution so that I know that I'm not allowed to talk to her and everything.
Gonna reconnect.
It's good to talk. It's good to talk.
Since I try.
So what is your, and again, I'm kind of coming in the middle of this, what is your status then? And your employment has nothing to do with my investigation. That'll be with the Office for Inclusion.
That's fine.
So what is it, I called the office earlier, again, I didn't say who I was, but they had said you were out of the office for 5.5 weeks, so I assume.
That was the dean to make sure that, you know, until this investigation was over.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's appropriate. That's understandable.
Okay.
Understandable, right? So I'm doing my autism research right now. So I said, go do your research. I'm working on some developmental classes.
Okay, so you're just working from home in the meantime?
Right.
Okay, pending a resolution of the university's investigation, I assume?
Right, that to me is the appropriate thing. If someone says that, then I shouldn't be in contact with patients. You know what I mean? So this is a voluntary, totally voluntary. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, I sat down and talked with the dean over lunch hour on Friday. You know, and we said, you know what, this would probably be the smartest thing. So because, you know, that's, if someone is saying that, then it's hard because I'm used to being on the other side. The advocate, you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, then that is totally appropriate. You know, so that's why we're doing this more as a voluntary, you know, thing, so that we don't have, you know, why was he still seeing patients?
Right, obviously from a liability standpoint for the university.
Yeah, so that's.
Well, it's great that you're understanding of that, obviously.
I would encourage it.
Right. So my disclaimer is I talk fast. So obviously you can probably already tell that. So if you need me to slow down, you got any questions, let me know. And I've had a lot of coffee today, so my caffeine is kicked in. So basically what I'd like to start is what you already know. So why don't we start with that, because it sounds like there's been some conversations that have already taken place. So I'd like to know what you know.
What I was told was that, the patient was concerned that I was inappropriately touching her and didn't understand why. You know, like, you know, and those are two things that confuse me, because I do this on a regular basis. This is a treatment that I lecture on. I lecture on not only here at Michigan State to the fellows and residents and medical students, but to national organizations, international. You know, I was the keynote guest speaker in Australia to the Australian Olympic Sports Medicine for this very technique. They gave me 2 hours to lecture on it. That's why I wanted to show you the videos, because there's no question I was touching her in private areas. That's what I do. I mean, but, you know, and I have stayed off the EMR. Do you know what EMR is?
No.
Electronic medical records, you know,
so
that's like her chart. So I have stayed out of her chart, you know, so I don't want to.
Since she came in?
Yeah, because I don't want to be like, oh, he doctored or whatever. So it should state in there even that, you know, I talked about this process, you know what I mean? And then for me, I'm a type of doctor that spends, believe it or not, 30 minutes is the quickest appointment that you're going to have with me. Okay? It's 30 to 60 minutes, okay? Because I do a lot of hands-on and I do a lot of mentoring. You know, I do a lot of talking, okay? So, you know, in her situation, that's why I'm beating myself up. I'm like, where did I go wrong? How did I not know that she was uncomfortable? That's the bizarre thing to me. Okay? It doesn't, that's why I'm like, what signs was I missing?
So that's what we're here for today, obviously, right?
Yeah.
There's two sides to every story.
Right. What didn't I feel or perceive that she was feeling that I didn't get? Because if you touch someone wrong, they should tighten up. If you touch someone, you know, this is what I lecture on too, it's like if you do something that's inappropriate, their their body reflexively is going to respond.
That's not
and
good.
Sense anything like that. You know what I mean? And that's why, okay.
That's not good, that's
maybe I was
good.
talking too much, because I talk and.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't get low, you bitch. Don't get fucking low.
But and so I'm known for this.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean? And her body, she picks me, okay? Because that's my area, and I know how to. I can show you the stuff, but that's why I'm like, because I tell people the touch is a personal thing, but there's a difference between palpation and caressing. There's a total different. Like I tell a story. This is a true story about when I was dating in medical school. And the reason why I went to DO school was for the hands-on stuff. And it ended shortly thereafter because we'd be intimate together and she'd say, "You're palpating again," because I was like, "But I can fix this." You know what I mean? And so I was like, so I was more in tune, and that's how I've made my reputation, is very in tune to the person's body, okay? And that's what makes me the doctor that I am. Okay, and so that's why I'm like, how the heck did I miss any signals? That's number one. Number two is also like, I don't get it. Why didn't she say something if she was feeling violated in any way, shape, and form? There was no communication.
Okay.
And that's why I'm like, what? Am I blind? Am I deaf? Didn't I hear or see anything? And she never, and she felt better. My understanding was when she was done that, yeah, because when I'm working on people, it's like, okay, how's it feel now? Number one, number two, what feels better? You know what I mean? And the pain was going away. She was getting better. And so if I'm resolving a problem and in constant communication with the patient talking, I don't get why she just didn't come out and say something. Okay? So those were my frustrations that I'm going over, because I obviously, if this happens once, it could happen again. I've been doing this for 15 years or whatever, and so wake up. Have you gotten too comfortable? Are you too relaxed about it? And I'm like, the only thing that I can think of is that I was trying to.
Okay.
She was like, we were talking about that, you know what I mean? Because what I try and do is gain confidence in a person, and then I help them, because I always tell people there's physical injury and there's mental injury.
Right.
And so much of it is more mental, and people. Okay,
right, very true.
Okay, so if I can get to some of the causes of the pains, it's people, I get referred all the time, people have pain, that comes to me, the pain goes away. One of the biggest differences, I talk to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I'm like, was I too involved talking to her? Or did I get into her space? Not this.
No, I hear you.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what I was told was that what made her call Dr. Kovan was, this is what Dr. Kovan said, was because I liked the picture on Instagram. And I liked the picture of her. She happened to be in the picture.
Okay.
Okay, and because I liked that picture, that's what made her call Jeff. And so I'm Dr. Kovan. And so I'm like, well, is it because she felt I was stalking her? I was trying to get into her space too much? You know what I mean? I said, I right now, I couldn't even tell you what she looks like. Okay. I mean, like.
But you know who we're referring to, obviously.
I don't even know her first name.
Okay.
I just know. You know,
okay.
Because.
Family.
Yeah. But honestly, right now, and that's why I'm staying on the EMR. I can't even recall her first name. Okay. But it's like, what the heck, So I'm trying to think to myself, you really screwed up because you got into her you broke into a space that she didn't want you to break into. You know, from my thought is from a mental standpoint that then clicked off, well, maybe this wasn't a therapeutic or medical touch.
Right.
Larry was asked a very open-ended question, one that could have been answered in one sentence. What do you already know? And instead of answering succinctly, he goes on a long spiel about how he is an expert in this field and gives lectures about what he does. He is associated with the Olympics and that it's inconceivable for someone to have complained the way Tomashow has. He also changes the question into being one about his own frustrations and confusion on what went wrong, which was in no way asked. It is generally believed that when innocent parties are asked open-ended questions like this one during interrogations, they answer as efficiently as possible. A patient believes I sexually assaulted her during a treatment would be a far more clear-cut answer, but Larry immediately asserts intellectual dominance over the interviewer by casually throwing out his claims to fame, as well as his education. He is subtly telling her that she couldn't possibly understand his procedures because he is a world-famous doctor. He goes on to assert that he didn't sexually assault her at all, but she was simply confused because during her visit, she had opened up to him about a past situation involving an ex-boyfriend stalking her. He goes on to say that after the visit, he had liked one of her Facebook photos. He outright states that she was probably triggered by that action and felt as if he had been stalking her, and that his very normal procedure was now seen as sexual. That is why she didn't have a negative reaction while he worked on her, which she did. And that would explain why she, a normally nice person, was making a false claim against him. As he talks about this outlandish statement, he continuously hypes up his own abilities, reminding the interviewer that he is one of the best doctors in Michigan, and that Amanda is just another one of the thousands of patients he sees a year.
That definitely could be part of the reason why she thinks
Right.
and why
Right.
she's reporting what she is,
Right.
which that is a portion of it.
Right.
So, what specifically did Dr. Kovan tell you that she, so is he the only one that spoke to you about this?
Well, Dr. Kovan told me that Dr. Dietzow, he's our clinical director.
Okay.
Right. So, and then of course the dean.
And did he tell both of them, or how did they find out?
The dean found out through the university. And so
Okay.
when the dean called down Jeff on Friday, or Thursday, Friday, one of those days. And so then Jeff came into the office to the dean at 7:30 in the morning. So I think it was Friday.
This past Friday?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then the dean called me down Friday afternoon.
Okay.
Okay.
So Dr. Kovan was the one that first initially met with you.
Right.
So what did he say? And obviously there was the issue of the Instagram picture. What else did he tell you?
That he felt violated, you know, that I was doing, like I touched her breast and that I moved her underwear out of the way, you know, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I do that all the time, you know. And he said that he tried to explain to her too that, because I've taught Jeff, Dr. Coleman, how to do this.
Okay.
You know, so he was like, but he said, because she said, Jeff said also she didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But Jeff said, because you're talking to me, I will move this forward because that's what I have to do. Because that's right, you know what I mean?
Right.
So she didn't, according to Jeff, said she didn't want to make a big deal of it. She just wanted to let me know and, you know, to try and take care of it. You know what I mean? So Jeff moved it forward. You know,
I assumed, or did he tell you that when he contacted?
Whoever, you know, he just moved it.
Okay, so he just told you he moved it forward.
Right,
okay.
Right. So that's how it got moved forward. You know what I mean? But like,
not giving enough juice.
I explained to her that Larry does this all the time, and there's, you know, that he knows what techniques, you know what I mean, that I do, and that is true. I mean, there's
I'm dropping still.
That's why I brought the computer. I think if you see the videos that I educate people on, yeah, you know, that's what I do. You know what I mean? And I can. If someone has a rib problem, you know what I mean, I can fix their rib, but if I can't, a lot of times you can't use the shoulder, there's myofascial techniques, you know. I can fix their rib by having my hand on their bottom area, and I can fix their rib by, you know, from above, okay? There's just myofascial techniques, but it's medical. That's the problem, like, how did she not...
Earlier in the interrogation, Larry would repeatedly state that how did he not see she was uncomfortable, and how did he not feel she was upset. 14 minutes in, and he has now changed his phrasing to how did she not understand, and how could she think so. He has already shifted the onus of responsibility onto her for his actions, and inferred that it was her fault for simply not understanding that he was a good guy who wouldn't assault her. He also states that the entire investigation was pushed forward not because there is an actual case here, or because there was any potential wrongdoing, but because it had to be a basic operating procedure. He insists that when he talked to the doctor, who Amanda had made the initial claim to, he didn't believe her and thought the claim was bullshit. Nasser is trying to nonchalantly get O'Brien to associate Amanda's claim with being disrespected by other medical professionals who, like Nasser, were trained in the same kind of physical therapy.
So those would be some of the things we work through, right? So what may be helpful is if we start off with the videos. That way you can show me, and then that way, and then what I'll probably have you do, if you don't mind, if they're not too long, and you can email them to me.
Oh, I got Dropbox.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I made a Dropbox for the dean, you know what I mean? I can't get on.
Yeah, you know.
But I can send you, you send me an email?
Yep, I sent you an email.
I can send you the link to the Dropbox?
Yep, that'd be perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, they normally have our wireless pretty well locked down here,
oh,
so.
Yeah, no, I can send it to you when I get home. It'd be under sports medicine. I have it in so many different areas because this is down in Australia. Okay, so this is what's down in Australia doing the lecture, and it looks like I put a few in here. So this is what probably looks like would be on the Dropbox, the majority of it. So let's go back in time. Okay, so this was like my first video that I ever made of this. It was made on a VHS tape.
Oh,
okay?
Lord, yeah, we're going way back.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so her parents are in the room, you know, and I wanted to give this lecture. So she volunteered. First time I ever met her, okay? And she had see her chest movement, you know, so that's her range of motion right now, okay? So this is what I do. So she had physical therapy, 6 months of physical therapy, okay? She'd been resting, you know, and they were like, okay, let's go see this doctor in Lansing. They came, okay? So I'm doing the palpation of this part, but let me just go forward here. You can see where my hand is going here now, but that's nothing compared to what I'll show you. That's her strength there, and okay, but right, let me do this here. So I tested in different areas, so now she has pain there from this, but so okay, so now I'm doing one of her her leg treatment, okay.
Go take TT too.
Go. Anyways, and then I work her up. I gotta keep going. This is just the video of it.
No, that's okay.
So now look at the range of motion just from that. Okay? Remember the range of motion was here.
Yeah.
Okay? And then I worked the fascia up the rest of her back. Okay, so she came in with a hamstring problem. Okay? But so where am I working? You see what I'm saying? I always tell people, it's like from your ponytail to your big toe, okay? Now, for 6 months, and now look at this range of motion, one treatment, okay? And that's where she couldn't get for 6 months, okay? You start doing this, and it's without even stretching her. Okay. The voice is off, you know.
No, that's okay.
You know, but so you can see that it basically doubled her range of motion without even starting. Now I'm starting to do a little bit of stretching. That's the end point. You can tell when her body language is, you know. So that was like, okay. Back then, I was thinking I was treating like the operator internist. I was trying to figure it out. Okay, the way that I first started working in this area was a gymnast had a hamstring problem and said they weren't getting better, same type of situation, and she was guiding me. And she was like taking my hand, and I mean, I'm right in her vaginal area, and she said, that's it. And all of a sudden, with my hand there, her range of motion doubled. You know, I'm like, what the frick did I just do? And so I did all this research, and that's how I became known for this, because I did all this research to try and figure it out. And I met with Dr. Greenman, who was he's passed away now, but he wrote the book on osteopathic manual medicine, principles of manual medicine. And he's like, I think you're doing more sacral tuberous and pelvic floor as opposed to obturator interns, you know. So anyways, so that's why this is like, okay, that was the beginning. You can see how long ago that is.
Yeah.
So, you know, and this is what I made for the lecture. And I do these videos all the time and send them to, like, everyone leaves instead of paper, they do the video on their phone.
Okay.
Okay, like if I wanted to go see a therapist or a doctor in a different area. So these people came up from, here we go. So this is in my lecture that I give now. You can see this is in our new office and everything.
And this is for the myofascial release.
Better quality, obviously,
Okay,
because
does not have very good external rotation. She's got so that hip like that. I don't want to twerk her. Then we use
now her parents are in the room, you know, for this too, of course. I think her mom actually is holding the camera.
right where the ischial tuberosity.
I'm trying to show it out. You can't really see it on the skeleton there, because like I said, they were holding the camera, not.
So I'm trying to avoid that.
But then here.
Coming up right through here with my counter pressure. I'll show you something in a second. This. Here. Just something like that. There you go. Yeah, should be fine. I'll put on over.
Astral gliding.
Okay.
Okay, so now, here is like where the leotard line would be if she's wearing the leotard. She's got a little tape. She's been taping her sacral tuberous ligament with
One of the things I invented was that tape job too.
Now here's your tuberosity. You're sore right here, correct? Okay? So I'm going to come more towards the rectum. Okay? Okay, so it doesn't hurt there when I push. I'm pushing at about a 45-degree angle. That's where I'm going to put my pressure. And maybe up towards the tailbone a little bit more as I come up. But this is my hand placement. Sometimes my hand has to be actually down here, or I come across. So I'm on the
Pubic symphysis. Okay.
Okay? And my hand supporting the pubic symphysis in the front.
In the front.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm touching her areas. You know what I mean? That's reality. You know what I mean? That's.
Sometimes I actually have to grab right here to apply that treatment process. Okay? So now I'm going to have you guys come back over here so they can see really.
That's fucking disgusting.
That is now what that's showing like hand placement.
That's what's
what you can
fucking
do
normal.
There's like IT band, pelvic floor. Let me go up to the. Here's like ribs. I think.
So now we're going to work
Just
on
update it again.
outside pop because she has that butt head connection where she had the when she flexed her neck. So I'm going to check her here now.
So my other hand you can't see, but it's in the inner rectovaginal area.
Working half of the spine. This ligament.
Oh wait, okay, this would be testing her. Okay, so listen to what she's saying.
Now, again, I'm going to bring her leg slightly out. Okay? Push on the tush. I'm going to bring her leg slightly out.
Go back further.
Okay, now, again, I'm going to bring her leg slightly out.
Go back further. This
So her
pain.
perispinal.
This is what I want to hear you say. Pain, yes, pain, yes. Did you hear that? Just briefly. That's what I'm doing up. So where's her pain? Is there pain? Is there pain? Is there pain? She had pain the whole way up, okay? And now I put my hand.
I think I'll make a script, big script to copy everything I have right now. And
And that's what I've been doing with her. Is like, does it hurt now? Does it hurt now? And I changed from those different hand positions. Pain doesn't hurt? Okay. You know, so I'll take a deep breath, you know, and then I hold it and work it out. You know, so that's what I'm getting at. Is like, I get her in a position that doesn't hurt. You know, the pain's going away, and I'm talking the whole time. That's when, like, if I put her in a position that made the pain go away, and my hand is down there, there's no question about it.
Right, obviously I can see that.
You know, why? But it's a conversation, too. You know what I mean? Number one, number two, you know, which feels better. And then I do this because I treat them seated, standing. So, like, here is even. in this one today.
Now, if we do both here, goes away, right? Head back down, head comes back, up the foot, head goes away. That shows you how the fascia to above and below. Okay, so what this tells me is that she needs to be back to the beginning. So we have force on the tip. Don't say down, don't say down as you walk. She's got a stable function. Showing the stride, showing and long as the distraction. That's short. So that needs to be low.
There. Okay, now watch.
Take her tuberous ligament, relax, and find pressure this way. So I'm pulling out. So the hand's here, okay? She's sitting and I'm pulling this way.
So she's going to be sitting on my hand. I didn't do this with her. So I'm just showing you that, you know, I do this in so many different positions. I do it standing too, okay? So now, she's legit sitting on my hand, okay? Coming up, you know, so you know bone to sit bone.
Yeah.
So my fingers are on the inside of that, between the two sit bones, pulling this way, okay? Change my position. And the pain's gone, because I have to change the, okay? So that was painful, putting my hand there, changing it because of different vectors, forces is. So it takes the pain away, you know, then okay, that tells me, okay, I need to do this, you know what I mean? So, and then I actually send them home with exercises.
That's what I was going to ask. So then what is...
She sits on her hand and she does some exercises. So let's, so, and then standing, do I have the one in here? No, I bet you that's just in the actual, this is like Botsford. I mean, I've done this lecture so many times. Let's just do Botsford. Is that, yeah, let's see if Botsford shows us the whatchamacallit one.
And then, so then do you tailor the exercises that you do depending on positionally where...
I have one patient that has to come in and she comes up and it's hers both sides. So she has to take both hands and push up. And it's the only she's had pain for a year. Okay? And since I've been showing her how to do it, she goes home, does it, and she's treating herself, and she's back to doing gymnastics now. But it's because of all these nerves that pass through here, too. Anyway, so this is, oh no, this is an older, the videos aren't connected.
Larry could have shown her one lecture or the PowerPoint and been done with it, but he makes a point to stop in the middle and seek out others that have the same information. He is purposely making a show of how many times he has done this lecture, how normal the procedure he did on Amanda is, and how he's been doing this for years without any issues. He even made a point to showing a video that was originally filmed on VHS to drive in the point about how long he has been doing this.
Sometimes when you convert them, I've been, you know, updating them, you know, and now it's like a PDF. This just shows the patterning of how through this ligament you go up and you affect the ribs, latissimus dorsi. This is all from where I found the research was in with Fleming. He did a lot of research on pregnant ladies. Okay, and so I used to joke that, you know, I took what they do on pregnant ladies and converted it to my athletes because I work with gymnasts, dancers, and figure skaters. That's like 80%, 90% of all my patients. They're all hyperflexible.
Right.
What happens when you're pregnant? Relaxing comes out in your pelvis and you get all these problems because of the pelvis relaxing to make room. So it's like, okay, you know, that was, so the research that was done on pregnant ladies, you know, with, okay, following this all stuff, that's what Fleming's, it's in this textbook called Movement Stability and Low Back Pain, okay? And so we're trying to create stability. So it'll morph, it'll make sense to you as I go through it. But
Larry shows quotes and research from other doctors and states that it's not just him doing these kinds of treatments, but he is keenly aware that what he is saying is going to be taken at face value, as he is the expert in the field. He misrepresents certain text in order to fit his own defense here, with the knowledge that even if she were to read the book, she wouldn't understand the conclusions being reached.
anyways, these are from his textbook showing you how through that, this is not just me being crazy man. I mean, this is
Right, right.
textbooks, you know.
Nothing you pulled out of the air.
Right, exactly, you know, or in this case, out of my ass, okay, if you want to put it. But do you see how that goes? You know what I mean? It's like, it's through. And so when you're in, and this is showing how the sacrum rocks, I'm trying to lecture. Okay, gait, how the gait is affected. There we go. So you can see how those videos are in the lecture presentation. And this one test, where's this? Oh, like this. This is Bella Crowley's. This is when we finally got tape on the back. Okay, and so she came in after 3-4 months of not being able to do her pose. Okay, her coach was a chiropractor. Anyway, so I did this treatment on her, and that's her range of motion. 3 days working on her at the gymnastics camp at our National Team Training Center, doing those techniques that you saw, and that's her range of motion. After 3-4 months of not being able to raise her leg up. Okay, so I mean that's why it's very powerful. You know what I mean? It makes huge differences. Right. Okay, this is like showing you like a self-treatment. Okay, I teach them to pick a wedgie. Yeah. Like, pick your wedgie. Get in there, pick your wedgie. You know, and you need to pull and stretch, and I'm showing you. You know, then like okay, you know, and then I'm just showing you that they do that. You know, I teach them to do that themselves. Okay.
And you said you've taught the staff over there at Sports Medicine?
Yeah, I gave this lecture at our MSU conference, our MSU Sports Medicine conference. You know what I mean, too. But so here's standing. So this, obviously, she has scoliosis, which gives you a lot of rib pain. Okay, so she's not a gymnast. You know what I mean? So anyway, so she comes in from. She's like graduated. She'll come in and just for this treatment for when her back is sore. Okay, but so I can treat scoliosis because of the ribs, standing. So I treat this standing, seated, you know. And this is showing, you know, like okay, standing, you can do it this way, you know. So and then taping it. Okay, there's different tape jobs, and you literally come into the ischial-rectal fossa with the tape job.
Okay, to use kinesio tape.
This is one of our.
Sacrotuberous ligament runs from the coccyx down to the ischiotuberatus. You would actually start, because I would start this up. And when you do this, you want to make sure that you stay off of the rectal area, and of course stay lateral to the labia. If you get too close to the rectal area, of course they get more skin irritation.
Okay, so I mean you're coming right where this. Okay, yeah. I mean I'm not saying I didn't touch her there. I purposefully touched her there. Okay, that's the. You know, so this was all like sacrotuberous, and over time, and yeah, I'll just
of course you did, you fucking piece of shit.
But that's.
What you do not want to do is create a fold of skin.
So you can see how I talk with my hands. I'm always.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Okay, yeah. You know what I mean? Even on the patient's body, you know, so as I'm talking with her, trying to describe things, I don't know. I see so many people, I don't know. But what I do know is that I've been doing this for so many decades, you know, not decades, but since like 1997. Okay. You know, like, why now? What happened, you know? And then, so that's where I switch over. And as I move over years, you don't just, you create, you still keep doing things, you know what I mean? And so
those are pretty much useless.
But this is my leotard.
Okay, this is, let's see, it is July 23rd.
This is my 2013.
Good try.
So I'm trying to put it into a leotard.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So these were like, this was the very first. But you can see how. And then I've got pictures of all this too as I've been developing it. Because now Under Armour is our sponsor. Okay. And Under Armour makes core shorts. And so this is like a core. So we have Under Armour and to try and lift. So this was our first demo of it. But you can see how it comes up, you know, to lift and shift. And it basically, it's like, I mean, I'm literally trying to design how do I put my hands on the leotard? You know what I mean? Like, so that they can wear it and have the same type of biomechanical support, you know? So we have Jim Kin, I've met with the people at Jim Kin, and since Under Armour is our newest sponsor, I thought this would be a great project for the two to work together. Okay, so I think on the drop box there's actually more pictures of that.
Okay.
But I need to get to another. So what I've gone from is from operator internist to sacrotuberous to going into more. No, it's not there. Pelvic floor work is what I'm trying to find that lecture. It's in the
wrong side.
This is the latest, I guess you could say. 4 lectures. Strengthening the core, back, core. Let me grab it.
No, sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not taking too much here.
Nope, that's what I'm here for. Okay. And that's what we're here for, is figure out exactly what happened so you can take all the time you need.
So are you sort of seeing, I mean, this is literally like, gosh, I wonder if those are on there too. Like the Romanian National Romania for Gymnastics, okay? They're,
Nasser plugs in an external hard drive to his computer. While normally this wouldn't be a reason to pause, it is more than likely that this hard drive also contained child porn at this time.
Yeah.
Trainer. I just made up videos for them. Let's go here. I thought
He confiscated the shit out of it. Checked. Due diligence. They would know.
I should have just put them all into.
Well, I did not tell you this evening, so it's not like you had time to prepare, really.
Right.
But you knew at some point I was calling, but.
Right. Videos for lectures.
Could make something like that. Big blocks.
So I make lecture.
Yeah, bigger version of it.
You know, and all these videos that I do, they all go to the people so that they know what they're doing when they go home, you know. Let's go here. 2 lectures, transfer. Lectures. So this was the most recent lecture. And
Yeah, you can keep that. Big blocks. Make it like, I don't know, 3 real blocks.
So this I gave at USA Gymnastics National Congress, okay, and I gave it also at the last year's MSU Annual Sports Medicine Conference, okay. So that's why it's like, okay, the grand junction was the sacrotuberous ligament, okay, and then I do a lot of pelvic floor work because gymnasts have a lot of urinary incontinence, the force pounding, and their urethra's small and they pee. I don't know if you've ever jumped and peed, you know, but
sometimes I run.
Right. Yeah. So gymnasts are like known for that, you know. So I talk about urinary incontinence and all that stuff, and but this is where I get into more like the culture of it, okay. Yeah, there you go. You know, the PP promises a don't ask, don't tell issue, because we literally have to do like PP interventions at times because the little one has a PP problem and we got to talk to him about it. But okay, so this is like, you know, I mean, because she actually heard her hand spin up high, you know what I mean? But she's like her hoo-ha, you know what I mean? So she who must not be named. It's like I try and been educating people about these techniques, you know what I mean? It's like everyone can't even say the word vagina, you know what I mean? It's like, hello, you know, you're medical professionals, you know what I mean? Like I've sent people for intravaginal pelvic floor work to Sparrow Hospital. Sometimes you actually have to go intravaginal, too, for this stuff. And so, anyway, so I'm going through the anatomy of this stuff and trying to explain how the muscles, like I've had kids actually strain these individual muscles that I found from physical exam, and people are like, you're full of crap. I do an MRI, they sprain that muscle. I know this area, it's whatever. That's MRI. So what we try and do is we actually teach them to use their pelvic floor muscles. Because if they use their pelvic floor muscles right, it actually increases their core stability. So it's when I'm in the pelvic floor area for this obturator and sacrotuberous ligament, you can't help but be affected the pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor is known to actually, if you have this more stable use of your pelvic floor, it actually increases your core stability. So I tell people that the core to the core is the floor. Start with the core by using your floor. Okay, so I'm trying to educate people on how to use the floor, and because that's what I figure I'm doing a lot of times is even though I'm there, I'm affecting the floor. And if I can get the floor to contract well, then I can get their their back muscles to work properly.
Ah, they make them contract the vagina, like squeeze his
So that's why it's a
fingers.
little bit different. For my athletes,
Oh my God.
they would have had these home exercise programs. Okay.
This is disgusting. I can't take it anymore.
Okay, I see athletes. Okay. The only way I see a non-athlete is as someone saying, "Will you do this?"
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's like, yes, then talk about jumping anyway. So these are like trigger points, areas that are mapped out, on the body and stuff. But there's I call it the butt broth, the lift and shift, kinesio tape. But there's another one. Pediatrics.
So then you just know.
You know what I mean? So, that's why I'm like, there's I'm missing the ones for the Romanian doctor too. That I know they're around here someplace, but. This is another lecture for this is the American
I'm gonna regroup my.
Medicine. It's the national sports medicine, like all the doctors of sports medicine doctors in the country.
It's not the best place to leave my stuff. So.
But anyway, so understanding the biomechanics of a single ligament makes a big difference. There's more that you'll see in the Dropbox.
Okay.
You'll see, I'm pretty graphic in the videos. Okay, and
Which is
ones
actually going to be helpful to the investigation.
And the other videos actually talk about, and that's I know they're on there. This is starting to irritate me just a little bit because I'm like, where did I put them? It'll be here's the yes, I was loading up to send some more stuff today, but it'll be I think underneath this it'll be like a sacrotuberous. Okay, just to let you know. Hey, can I actually do this? That's not all of them. What happened? I thought I added. I better add those ones with the Romanian. Okay, Larry, bear with me.
No, you're fine.
But that's why I'm like, I'm like, I do this. This is what I do. Why didn't I get the idea that she?
I just modest people. That's it.
Because I have to. I mean, like I do this on minors. You know what I mean, with a parent in the room.
Yeah.
Larry rarely, if ever, worked on minors with a parent in the room anymore. He would usually usher them out politely and tell them he was just going to be doing a standard exam. However, he was more than aware that implying he did this to minors by themselves, without anyone else present, would create issues. By his own accord, Larry brings up his work with minors as a way to further establish himself as a good guy, because no one who had abused a child would self-report like this.
But you have to be able to communicate, you have to be able to sense what the heck is going on, And why I didn't get that feeling from her is beyond me. And and that's a question, I guess, that I can't answer because I'm not talking with her, but she did not vocalize anything to me that she was feeling offended. If anything, like I said, she was feeling like yes, I feel better. Okay, so that's why I'm like, if she's feeling better, what tipped her off to start thinking like, what the heck is this guy doing?
At the beginning of the interrogation, Larry was deliberate in stating that he never noticed that she was upset or felt violated by the procedure, but now he is fully shifted into stating that not only did she not feel violated at the time, but she actually responded well to it, stating it felt good repeatedly, and only changed her mind when he liked her photo on social media. He has gone from casually trying to discredit her to outright denying that there had been a problem in the first place, even in terms of noticing her own discomfort.
And that's
no.
If you can't find him now, that's okay. It's
Go ahead. I can look while you're talking more.
So when Dr. Colvin initially talked to you about this, so it seems like there was some time that went by from when he initially talked to you to when you were talked to again. Mm-hmm. When he initially talked to you and you guys had your conversation, what was the resolution or outcome of that conversation? So he tells you, hey, she comes in here.
Right. I wasn't that worried about it. I mean, at that point, because he had said he explained it to her, and she didn't want to make a big deal of it. Was his words.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But he said he had to move it up the chain.
And that he explained the procedure to her when you say he explained it to her?
He explained it to her. I can't talk for him.
No, I'm just curious if he told you.
What he said is that I tried to explain to her what you do. You know what I mean? And so those were his words, you know what I mean? Or paraphrasing, because I can't remember what
No, that's okay.
And she didn't want to make a big deal of it. And so those were the three things was that I remember from our conversation was the fourth.
Not to go to UNDR.
After the Instagram picture and the moving of the underwear and moving of her breast, and because I was treating her ribs area, and then that she didn't want to make a big deal of it, but she thought she needed to talk to Jeff about it, and then Jeff saying that, appreciate what you're telling me, so I will move this up the chain.
Okay.
Okay, so that was like the...
So then it was just kind of left open-ended for him to follow back up with you?
Nothing else that happened. There was no conversation until Friday.
Okay.
Okay, it was just so I figured, okay, nothing ever happened, you know what I mean? Then once it did actually then make it up the chain, and the dean called in Jeff Friday morning, that's when it's like, okay, so obviously she's making more of a deal of it, you know what I mean, than not wanting to make a big deal of it. And I told Jeff at that time, I said, if she felt that way, I would encourage her to say things. If she were to talk to me, to say that some doctor did something, I said, you need to discuss this. You know what I mean? Because that's what I am more of the patient advocate than anything else. It's my role. That's me. I don't know how else to say it. It's like me.
Right. Everyone has their own style.
Yeah. Well, it's not just style. It's you. You know what I mean? As a person, to be able to do this stuff and to be able to do this stuff for so long, if you don't have patient confidence and patient trust, you would have been having my ass in here how many times?
Right.
Okay, especially when I'm doing this on 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, okay, with their parents there. But I'm obviously doing a doggone good job explaining things, okay, because what?
That was going to be one of my questions, obviously. So there's never been any complaints that you're aware of prior to this one? And obviously you're videotaping things here, you're doing
right. Well, this has been going on for forever.
As we know, Larry had complaints come in about him a number of times, and he is well aware of this fact. He is also well aware of the fact that his colleagues had squashed all of the complaints before they were recorded, and there was no proof of them to speak of. But he uses the fact that no one had complained before as a sign that what he did was completely above board and normal, and that this entire interrogation was in fact insulting, because he obviously is darn good at his job.
You know what I mean? Like, not forever, but the videos, you can see I've been videoing and changing and adapting, so I keep, so that it's transforming, from being just the operator intern to sacrotuberous to pelvic floor, you know what I mean? So all of that is the fulmination, the end point. guess I can't find it.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
But you want to see the ones with the, and listen to the words that I'm saying too, okay? And just watch my body movements, okay? When I'm checking things, you know, when my hands are on the patient, please watch, because I could see how she's massaging my breast. No, I'm like, how's that there now? How's that there? You'll see my hands move, okay? It's talking with my hands. It's how's that feel there now? It's like, I tell people, you don't want to use left, right, or to your left, or you move it so they know what you're talking about. They can sense movement, right? So if I try to describe how does my left hand feel next to your right, no.
Right.
But if I go like this, you know what I'm talking about, okay? So it's the way that I communicate because your hands are on them.
So that is exactly what we're talking about.
In some cases, the interrogator will go along with a noticeably bullshit story in order to get more false details to use against the other party later. This is not the case here. O'Brien did believe that what Larry was saying was in fact true. Here, she nearly confirms that by stating that it seems like what he is showing her on his tapes of his medical procedures is in line with what Amanda stated happened to her. Larry had already gotten away with his crimes again, and he knows it. From here on out, Larry's demeanor will completely change, and he will at times be appearing to have fun, crack jokes, and be more expressive.
So was there more details given to you on Friday then? Did they go over, because you said, hey, they came back.
On Friday, what the dean said was that it's been moved up the chain and that this could become a police issue, or it's, that it could become a police issue if she chooses to file a police report or whatever, and that because of that, it'd be in your best interest, in our best interest, if we don't have you see patients right now, because
which makes sense, like you said.
Well, yeah, and I'm like, sure. He goes, so you take the time that we need, do the research, do the academic, work that I'm doing, So I said, that's exactly, what I mean. So I'm not even going to the high school. I go to I'm Hope High School's team doctor, and the team doctor at Twist Stars. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, So I guess that's where I'm getting at is, what communication did I miss that she was trying to tell me? Okay, did she say anything about verbalizing that I feel uncomfortable or anything like that? Because if she did, I didn't hear it.
So those are some of the things that I'll go over with you. I can go over in very fine detail as to what she said. So I'm not going to hide anything from you. There's not going to be any secrets. I'll go over all that stuff with you. I just wanted to know kind of what you knew up front, and then obviously I wanted to see the videos, because what I'm seeing in these videos is basically very similar to what she is telling me happened.
That's what I do.
Yep. So that is why I wanted to see those first, to say, okay, are we on the same page? Are we talking about the same thing from the get-go? Which we are talking about the same thing. I see those. So it'll be very important for me to get those videos, and especially the ones, if you have ones in more detail, like you said, are a little more graphic.
To the to Romania.
Okay.
So those were just done for 2013 European, so last summer.
Okay.
So getting ready for the 2013 European.
I have to go visit Triton, and then
problem. And so they contacted me to say, hey, what can you do to help? I mean, England, Canada, Germany. I mean,
Right.
This is what I do. Okay, I'm not saying that yes, I'm there, and yes, it's medical. It's not. I don't know how else to say it, but I'm totally taken by surprise. But at the same time, feel like crap that someone would feel that I was doing something inappropriate to them. Because this is how I make my living. This is what I do. I've helped scores of people by doing these personal issues.
Which is good to hear. It's good to hear that you feel bad that she feels that way.
Yeah, because I feel like this little deviant, I mean, and that's not right, and that's not.
That's totally fucking right.
I mean, that's reality. Okay, that's who I am. Okay, that's why I'm like, of all the freaking people, I'm the only guy even allowed in with the national team. Okay, it's all our females. Okay, but because of who I am, it's the trust. If I did something wrong, do you know how quickly that would spread like wildfire across? I mean,
Right.
This is my 27th year with the team, you know what I mean, or whatever, since 1986. I've been with the national team, and I'm telling you, those kids, it would go boom, chuck, boom, chuck, boom, chuck, chuck. You know what I mean? Like, no question about it, okay? And that's what I'm saying is that there has to be a way that a person's able to disconnect. Okay? If you don't disconnect, then you're screwed. You know what I mean? You got to be able to disconnect. Because that's what I'm saying is that when you're in that area, you have to be helping. You have to be doing therapeutic touch, not any other touch, because that sensations can be relayed through your hands. Persons can tell. You know what I mean? And it's like, how did I miss that stimulus that she felt that I was doing it inappropriately? Was I really that off that day or what? You know, that's my issue. And it's hard because it was so long ago, you know what I mean? But it's what I do all the time. So was I tired? I'm like, did I get to sleep that night? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to figure out, was I off? Was I sick? You know what I mean? I only get 5 hours of sleep usually a night anyways, you know, but that's normal. Like, did I get less than that night? You know, what made me out of sync? What made me not be able to recognize that I was making a patient uncomfortable? Okay?
So generally, do they verbalize that, or a combination thereof?
There has been a few times where that has been brought up, okay? And in each and every time there was sexual abuse.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying is when they're uncomfortable like that, there's been 3 cases, and all 3 of them were sexually abused.
Earlier in the interview, Nasser stated there had never been any complaints about his practices, but changes it here to state that there now have been 3 complaints sent on him before, and according to him, they were all false and had been made because the person had been sexually abused before. Nasser is trying to once again discredit the complaint sent in on him by saying that Amanda had been too traumatized by prior abuse to realize he was just doing his job. O'Brien failed to notice the change in answer and instead agrees with Nasser.
Okay, so that's why I'm like, yeah. Okay, that's what I'm like, okay, is there something more? What am I missing? Because that's what I'm thinking all the time. Okay, if someone's tensing up or having an issue with this, my first inclination is, were they ever sexually abused? Okay?
One computer and one display.
That's what I've had conversations with people about, you know what I mean? And now I'm the one on the other, that's what I'm saying, is I'm the one on the other side of the table now, you know? Like, so I'm like, how did I, if say if for God help me, she's never been, sexually abused, but say if she was, that's my job. Why would I miss that? Because then it's my job to bring help to that. You see what I'm saying? So where am I losing it that if she, God forbid, had been, then I would have missed that too? Because then it's like, okay, boom, chaka, boom, whole another period of like it's time to have some psychiatric intervention.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, 3 times. Okay? And so that's, though there's been other than that, and each one of them were in the past sexually abused. You know, and so, but I'm the one who brings it up.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
You know, she's way uncomfortable for what I'm doing. You know, without them even having to verbalize. Okay? Because
obviously you can feel a change in their body.
Okay, it's like, that's not right. There's something wrong here. You know what I mean? And so then I talk, because it's kind of tricky to minor. You know, then I talk to the parent. I'm saying, what's going on here?
Whatever, man.
Okay.
So you obviously talked to, it sounds like...
It's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
I just was waiting since Friday when I heard that it did go forward to have this conversation, because I don't want her to mentally be going through what someone would be going through when they think that they've been sexually violated. Okay? That's the problem that I'm facing, is that it's a dichotomy for me. It's like, I'm the person that usually puts the arm around them, not the one who's you know, doing the wrong thing. That's the dichotomy that I'm stuck in.
And you're right.
And I
So that's what she filed a report for. So right now what the report is titled, just so you know, is a sexual assault.
Right.
Because that is, like you said, that is how she's feeling. That is what she think happened. That's her perception of things. So there's a couple different times that she's feeling that you sexually assaulted her throughout the examination. Okay. She did say everything that you were telling me is along what she said. Hey, it was a lengthy examination. Right. Went through these exercises. Right. You were working on basically her whole entire body. Right. So, you know, everything you're walking me through over here and you're showing me is everything that she was telling me. What she is saying, and you use the words, the same words she used, that she's saying that. And then she said that she felt like that you were massaging her breast and that that was not part of the manipulation that you were doing. So that'd be the first piece. So you want to talk about that first piece as what it is you were doing.
Right. When you're working ribs, okay, if you can't use the arm, if your shoulder, you know, it's like, okay, the muscle energy part, I'll crack a back, okay, so we crack a back, crack a neck, you know, the usual stuff, and then we try and do push against me, and then you do stretches, okay, so when I'm doing stretches, yeah, okay, you're on the...
And again, if you have videos of that too, that would be helpful.
Let me show you here.
Not that you necessarily have videos of everything, but...
I teach the ribs.
I could have maybe some.
People like to treat the ribs, and because I work with the crew athletes,
I don't.
The crew athletes, you know, have rib issues, obviously, but that's.
Could I some of those?
That's another area that I do a ton of lecturing on because I treat it a lot. My computer was getting too big, so that's why I got the extra hard drive. Let's go to the extra hard drive. Lectures and articles. Lots of lectures.
Okay. It's time to scream that one. Yeah. Oh, I don't have any O2 left. At all.
Okay, so like, this is Dr. Green.
Do you sell fuel?
Okay, so you can see his hands.
Please sell fuel. No,
okay,
you don't sell fuel.
What I tell people is, when you're working on the ribs, okay, I don't like to stand on the side. I do it sideline. Okay. When I do it, I'll be at their
Can't
head.
do it without
or do
fuel.
It sideline.
Okay.
Okay. And I tell people, don't come in this way. That's offensive. Come in this way. Okay. If you come in over their head, that's offensive. You know what I mean? It's just the way that I talk about it. So I actually come off from the side. Okay. And then I'll turn their head and do some work that way with it. But that to me is a lot. When you come at someone this way, that's more offensive.
Seems
so
assaultive.
Right, exactly. And that's why I'm like, I lecture to people about how you try and not, you come across from the sides, and then when you sideline them, you can do it sideline sitting, because it's like showing up prone. But it's the rib cage. You know what I mean? You're going to be on the chest wall. You move the breast down. You move the breast down to get down to the wall, okay? It's like giving someone a mammogram almost, okay? And when you do the myofascial, let me see if I've got the save.
So while you're doing this, are you explaining, I mean...
I always do! Okay. No, because I have to know if it's making them feel better.
Larry has completely abandoned his previous timid, concerned facade, and in a truly strange moment, yelled at the interrogator in a joking fashion. If he was worried about coming across as guilty or having anything to hide earlier, he was completely relaxed now, to the point where this casual outburst is simply accepted.
That's why I'm like, is that because there's, okay, if that doesn't work, I'm going to change my hand position. If that doesn't work, it has to be a conversation. I'm not omnipotent. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's why I'm like, I don't understand why she just didn't say, I don't understand what you're doing, you know, or anything along those lines. It's like, really?
So she did say, you know, while you were working on her, that you did say, you know, does this feel better?
Yeah.
And that you were going on with that. What her perception is that you weren't.
Well, shit, I'm soon in its face now.
So she didn't know what was coming. But that she was very well aware that while you were doing that, you were saying, you know, how does this feel? Does this feel better? And that she was answering, you know.
Oh, this is shit?
So again.
Because I can't remember, but I do this on all my patients. If you do the same thing every time, you know what I mean, then I'm like, okay, if I was treating ribs.
Police work, we have to do the same thing, do it the same way every time.
And then you don't screw up, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, so where did she, I don't know if you can tell me that, but did she ever say anything to me?
Yes, I can tell you everything. I have no problem telling you.
Did she say something like, I feel offended, or what are you doing, or can you explain it to me better, and I blew her off?
So what she's saying is that while you were, what she said in her words is massaging her breast, what she said is that at some point she tells you, okay, you don't need to work on my shoulder anymore.
Okay.
I don't need to work on my shoulder. Okay. It has like longer term issues and I need more work than that. Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember, honestly.
Okay.
But so did I stop working on her shoulder, or what did I do?
Yes.
Okay, so she said stop working on her shoulder, I stopped working on her shoulder, okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't do anything against her wishes. I mean, right, she said to stop, I stopped, okay.
So what she feels, and again, this is her perception and what she feels, and you know, you're showing me videos, you're explaining everything too, which makes sense what I'm seeing here too. What she's saying is that, you know, initially your hand was up kind of on her top shoulder area and slightly on the top of her breast, and then moved down again, like and what she calls is like a full frontal on top of her breast, and that you're massaging her breast. So, nope.
It's okay, I understand her perception.
Yeah, and so
you can obviously see how she could feel that way, you know. And there's, when we do myofascial, you know, too, you are having her breathe, you know, take a deep breath, you know, exhale, and you're doing that. Okay, I mean, as they're breathing, you're doing that motion to try and stretch the fascia. Okay, it's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're perfectly fine. It's good for you to talk a lot, right? Because then it's more for me to know. So I'm not going to stop you from talking. You know, I prefer you talk more than less. So you're not going to hurt my feelings. So what her perception is that she didn't know that was going to be done, but that there was the communication throughout that, hey, how does this feel? Does this feel better? Does this not feel better? And then she said she got to a point where she felt uncomfortable and she thought that it was inappropriate and went to the line of being from a medical manipulation to being inappropriate, at which time that she had said, hey, I think you've worked on my shoulder enough. I don't need you to work on my shoulder enough. And again, I know you see a lot of patients. I just don't know if, you know, you remember anything specific to that or her saying that?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was wondering, you know, but at least I would do if someone says, okay, I think you've done enough, I stop. You know,
right, which is what she said you did.
Right, so, okay, go ahead.
So that's the first piece of it. Then she says, in the first video that you show me, where she's flat on her stomach, and then what she says, again, just like you're showing me and you're explaining to me, is that your hand had went in between her butt cheeks, and then she said the head went more towards her vagina and the vagina hole.
Well, not.
That's the way she's explaining it to me. So, and again, I'm not using medical terms, I'm using her terms, right? So what she says that your fingers went by her vagina hole, and that she felt again that was a massaging nature, and that she felt that had went on for too long, and that you hadn't explained it to her prior to you doing it, so it was unexpected to her that she didn't know that was coming, And then when you were doing it, that she felt like it was not.
Was I talking to her during the time though, like I normally
So
do?
she says, yes, again,
to jump as far as I can.
does this feel better?
Right.
And she says that initially she says, yes, it does feel better, so you continue.
Right.
And then she says that at some point that she says that she felt that it was hurting, so she says, hey, that hurts, can you stop? And then you said you stopped at that time again.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. It's an interaction, and I don't know how to say this, but that would be appropriate. It's like, you know, you're working on them, and you're trying to trying to do the work. You need that feedback from the patient. And I'm getting the feedback, and I'm responsive to the feedback, and I'm talking my way.
But it's her fucking fault.
I was, you know what I mean? And so, I might have, I haven't got on the records, but if they, that was my second, third, I don't know, it was I had seen her before, I know that.
Okay.
So that it might be in the note from before that I explained to her. Okay, so if you check the notes, okay, and see. If there is check the notes and see. I mean, if it's maybe, because sometimes I'll do that. If it's a repeat patient, I don't explain it all over again. I explain it the first time. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying.
So have you done this type of?
I don't know if I did it on her for the first time or not. Okay. What I'm saying is that if that was in my treatment plan, you know what I mean? Like, okay, this is what we do when you come in, you know, this is the process or whatever. I might have explained it to her the first visit. Now I'll make the appointment and come in, you know what I mean, and we'll do the work the second time. So it might have been like, you know, when you, the first time's an initial eval, I might think, okay, this is how we'll go with this, and I would have explained things in the first visit about what we're going to do the next visit, okay? So that's when it's a follow-up. I usually don't explain as much because I think I explained a lot, and I just get to the work and I talk through it. So that would be part of the documented medical record. Okay.
How your office? How would she go about signing release to get those medical records to turn over to me, or how would that? Is that how you get your normal procedures over there?
Yeah. It's the release because of HIPAA.
Yeah, right. Obviously, I would need a search warrant for that stuff. So, if she were to
copies of the records. You know.
Okay.
Yeah, and so and then because I don't want to be on there. You know what I mean? So whatever's there is there. Okay, so whatever. Okay, so that's what I'm saying is that if I explain stuff, a lot of times I'll explain it in the first visit. Okay, but from now on, I'll tell you what, this whole thing is going to change because I cannot have anyone leave me again. You know what I mean? That's the bottom line. You know what I mean? So
which is why you're here today, obviously.
Exactly, because there's no way. So I mean, lots of things have to change to protect myself from having that, happen again. You know what I mean? And also the patient from feeling that way. But it's like, okay, what can we do? So it's like I've already been talking with Dr. Kovan and Dr. Deep. So we need to do this, we need to do that. We're talking about policy changes. You know what I mean? So that because we all go in the rooms by ourselves. My wife is at the Alliance. You know what I mean? She says she gets sometimes her exam done, which is the doctor.
That can be one of my questions. Because she said that there was a resident in the room for
usually
a fair amount.
Or medical students or a fellow. There's a bunch of people that rotate through.
Okay, so then does the resident, and again, just because I don't know your guys' procedure, does the resident normally stay in the room the whole time, or they come and go?
It depends on when the next, because they usually go in first. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that resident went in first on that. It's been a while, but the resident will usually start, report, or it depends on where they are, where we are. Like if I go in the room with the resident, then I'll go through stuff, and then if the next patient comes, I send the resident to the next patient, because that's part of they have to do an eval and then report to you what they saw and all that stuff. So then if I will be in the room, either the resident goes in first and I join the resident, and then we work, and then the resident, if the next patient comes, go to the next room, so that we keep the traffic flow going. So that's
holy shit, it's reduced.
Process of normal routine would be if because I only have 2 rooms, and if if I hear the patient gets put in the room next to us, I'm like,
Yeah, it's
check,
not
the patient's ready,
100%.
we're seeing the patient, you know, and it depends on where that resident is, because the residents learn, I teach some of the residents, if they're DOs that do manual medicine, some of these techniques, like put your hand here, do that, you know what I mean, and then I say, okay, you know, go to the next room, if you're ready, you can, you know, so it's like see one, do one, teach one type deal. You know? So, you know, it depends on which resident it is, you know, as to where they are in the rotation and training. But yeah, the resident could have actually done some of this.
So do you remember in this specific incident, like when the resident left, or was it in there?
I don't remember, you know, but if there was a resident, that would be and Dr. Kovan actually, not just said that, Dr. Kovan did bring up that the resident left, that there was a resident, the resident left the room. Okay, so if the resident left the room, it was to go see another patient.
Okay.
Okay, but that would have been the only reason why the resident would have left the room, was to bring a patient come in. You know, so that's again, that would make sense because that's what I always do. That's a standard procedure.
So obviously that's one of her concerns too, is that, you know, she felt comfortable while the resident was in there, because obviously there's two people in there. The resident was a female at the time. And then she said that when this occurred, the resident was no longer in the room, and she didn't know, obviously, you know, what the intention of that was, because that's when these manipulations were taking place.
Yeah, so it depends on when that resident was in their rotation. Okay, so that's what I'm saying, is a lot of times I will, if they're DOs and they've got a manual medicine hint, they'll actually tint their desire, you know. They'll learn this stuff.
Okay.
You know, put your hand here, do this. And I don't know if that resident was one of those, because if it's an MD resident, they don't have
Do you know who the resident was for that one? Do you have a specific resident assigned to you, or residents assigned to you?
We have residents, well, they rotate through on,
Okay.
medics, I don't even know if it's a resident. You know,
Okay. All right.
Okay, so, but that's normal for a lot of us, you know, I mean, like they go in and see a patient, so they're in the room by themselves with the patients, that's.
Okay. With Dr. Colvin, or who, you know, who would have that information as to which resident was with you that day?
Vicki Curley, our office manager.
Okay.
Would be able to figure that out, I think. You know what I mean? Because there should be a rotation graph or whatever.
Okay.
So,
The batteries and.
Vicki Curley, our office manager, would know that. You know, so do you want me to try and get that information to you?
I can call. Just because obviously I'm gonna want to talk to the if they, yeah, because obviously they were in a room, it sounds like, for almost, I'll even go as far as like 3/4 of the examination time. So I obviously want to talk to that resident to find out, hey, what did you observe during the 3/4 of the time that you're in the room? When did you leave the room? And how did you come about leaving the room? Things like that.
I would have been to have them see another patient.
Okay.
So unless it was the end of the day and they had to leave, but that's rare.
Okay.
It would have been to see the next patient.
Okay. And so then, you were trying to schedule a follow-up appointment with her. And
normally I say when I do this, it's like, okay, if they respond well, I'm like, okay, we'll do once a week for like 3 weeks, and then you're usually, it's like once a week for 3 weeks, and then if you're, then usually I tell people, you're like 80 to 90% better, we'll spread it out, we'll put an appointment out there for a month after that, or whatever, you know, to see if you can hold the treatment, you know what I mean? But it's usually like initial appointment, and once a week for 3 weeks, if this stuff works, you know what I mean? So the manipulations, and so if it had, if there was no benefit from the treatment, she'd have been off. And with the baby, I would like, okay, you know, you didn't benefit from it, I'm not going to do it again.
Bunch of bull fucking
You
shit.
see the effect, you know, I mean, it's like, and obviously she must have, like she said, at first it was doing better, you know what I mean, but whatever process it, like, so, then obviously she felt violated, you know what I mean, but the feedback that I was getting was, okay, she's getting better, you know, that's the way that I was, the communication reciprocation, that's what I was feeling. Okay? So that's the confusion, I guess. Where did I not sense any bodily changes, you know, because obviously she said, okay, you know, that's good or whatever, and I was done, you know what I mean? So there was no other mannerisms that I there's no other mannerisms I can figure out how I would know that she's not on the okay, that's what I'm getting at. Is why that's why I'm having like, okay. When did I see that patient? What did I do? What clues? What am I missing here? Okay, because this is a normal process for me. Okay, that's why I'm like, why this person? Why that time? What the heck happened? Okay, and so it's like, we're not talking about
Yeah.
okay, but so it is what it is. But that's why I'm like, I had no context. I had no reason to. I have no. It's other than.
All for medical reasons.
Well, of course, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like this is my me. I don't know. It's like, and so I don't know what created me upset that day that I did this. All the times that I've done this, it's like, so I don't know. I don't know.
Obviously, like you said, you're not picking up anything from her body that you're
Right.
thinking, hey, she's feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you would get that, and you would get that texting. I mean, you get that.
So do you remember her, and I obviously gave you the information for both times when she said, hey, I don't need to look at my shoulder anymore. You're saying you don't remember her saying that
I can't remember. All I'm doing is generalization. It's like, I know that if I was treating her in that way, this is what I must have been doing. You know what I mean? Because that's standard. That's okay. So, to remember, how can I honestly say that I can remember the details of every incident? That's not like, that's not.
Yeah, and I'm asking just because obviously the details are helpful if you do remember them.
Right.
And then as far as when you were down, by her vagina, is that something that you remember as far as her saying, that hurts or stop or anything like that?
I'm honest, I don't. If she said stop or hurts, I would have stopped and changed. That would have been. So if she said that, that should have been my response. Okay, so that's what I did. I mean, so I hope I stopped her. I mean, it's looking hurt or whatever. So, but it's clear. I mean, it is clear in my mind that obviously I was doing those techniques and trying to explain to her as I'm going through it. And, so I'm like, well, obviously, there's going to be a disconnect that occurred. And how come I wasn't aware of that disconnect? That's going to be my big issue that I have to wrestle with, is why didn't I understand that at that time I had a patient who that's my biggest, that's my big issue that I gotta do, because that's from here, it's like, what, wake up, you know what I mean, like, why, that'll never leave me, okay, that's my self-torture, I guess you could say. Yes, she was victimized, yes, I was victimized to myself, okay, because hurting someone like that ain't right, okay, it's not right.
Larry had earlier in the interrogation made soft allusions to the idea that he, alongside Amanda, was a victim in this situation, but here he outright states as much, calling even being questioned his own personal torture. He has already stated numerous times that he is well aware of these kinds of misunderstandings that can often arise from what he does, but now states that to even be questioned at all is hell.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. That's why that hurts me to hurt her, if that makes sense.
Yep, I'm following you, yeah.
So, anyways, that's what I'm going to have to live with. That's plain and simple. Okay, and that's why I keep rolling in my head. So I need other safeguards, because if I can't find out why, I got to have other safeguards built in that is other than my own use of force movement. Okay, because I need to have some other, and so it's got to change. because it's done. All these years of work is done. Flush it. You know, it's done. Because I cannot do that to another person, and I cannot live through that for myself too. You know, so it's like, okay, you know, total rework. What are we gonna do? You know, so but it's gotta change. It has to.
Right. Which is true, because like you said, I mean, everyone's covered.
Yeah, well,
right.
You're thinking like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're thinking like a police officer. I'm thinking
Right.
like I don't want coverage.
I am a police officer,
I know,
right?
I know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, no, it's not about
Yeah.
coverage. It's about morals and ethics and how people feel.
Right, which is your doctor speak.
No, that's...
Right, we're on the same page.
Okay.
We're on the same page.
This man had molested over 100 girls at this point, and in the middle of the interrogation for another claim, is laughing and hiding his head flirtily at the interrogator. If there is any clip in this investigation that makes my blood boil, it is this one.
So for those other videos,
It's infuriating.
those show more in detail. I know you said they're graphic, but are they showing like the exact hand placement
Yeah,
where
like
they're
my
at?
hand, and I'm talking about the between the badge, you know, the rectal area.
Okay.
And I'm working up toward the rib cage now, you know, but I don't have any videos of the techniques for the rib cage, you know what I mean, other than the lectures that
Okay.
And that's, you know, because that's like how to say, that's nothing. I don't know, you know, I mean, that's like, that's so common that's a normal,
Okay.
you know what I mean, where you're, yeah, you know what I mean, that's, you can open up any textbook and see that. Okay, so that's unlike, I don't have any videos of that.
No, that's fine. Even if you send me like the few pictures that you showed me, that would be more than sufficient, because obviously we can see the hand placement.
But I'm reversed. Okay. I would have been at her head, and that's why I'm like the shoulder stuff. I would have had her on her side too. Okay. So I would have had her on her side, and then I'm compressing, because when you do the fascial releases, you can do it sitting, okay? But I like to lay them either down or on their side, okay? And then you can compress better front to back, okay? And then I've got control of their arms. So I can compress if you're on the fourth rib, fifth rib, third rib, you know, because the scapular-thoracic dynamics of the way your shoulder moves, the scapular rolls between the rib bones, because of the using the serratus and the scapula, and so when you want to release the rib,
I need a full reactor on that bitch.
Costovertebral compression, okay, and then you can use the scapula.
I think that's gonna be my next
If I'm working rib 4 or rib
investment.
5,
I'm gonna go on
rib
C2
3,
too.
that's breast. You know, I mean, that's breast, and that's breast, but it's compression, it's, you know, and so if she said I was massaging, it would have been like, does that feel better there? Does that feel better there? Take a deep breath, you know, that type of thing. So take a deep breath, move your arm up. I would have been, she would have been laying on her back, and I would have like turned her head, you know, and done like one hand would have been here pushing down, you know, like this. Sometimes I'm here between the breasts, you know what I mean? But so sometimes you're cross patterning, okay? So that you're doing it from this direction, okay? So, but it's more like this as opposed to like this, okay? And then sideline, you're like this, okay? So like her head.
Don't need that much.
That's the head. Okay. So I would have been like this, okay, with my hands on, so that my thumbs, so like your thumbs connect from the costosternal to mid-axillary line, costovertebral, and you compress the rib, and as they breathe, then the ribs, you're able to release. Okay, so if I did sideline techniques, that's my sideline techniques. Okay, if it's supine, it's supine. Okay, laying on their back. Yeah. You know, and sometimes you go from prone to supine to seated to, you know, I mean, you got all these different ways to see them. You know, that's why I'm like, it could have been any one of those, you know, positions, but that's the positions I would have used for those rib techniques. And again, if she felt offended, I'm like, why?
I'm like, fuck you.
And that's my.
Yeah, that's it.
So it seems like you obviously have, which is great, you have a very set routine that you go through with every patient. Is there any reason you can think of why you wouldn't have walked her through the steps as to what was coming up next or what you're going to do?
Other than if I thought I had explained it to her at the visit before, because this was a follow-up visit. Okay, that would have been the only reason why. Would have been a visit before. Okay. Instead of having, so that's why then I'm just going through it because I've already explained what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? So does that make any sense?
Yeah. So I don't know if you recall that at all or no, but that
I don't.
Yeah, so she had said that so that in the videos you showed me, it looks like there was some butt palpitations.
Right.
So that's what she was in there for before, was that, and she says she remembers leaving and telling like people on her she came back. We kind of talk about that. So that's when she was in there. So.
But she was there before.
On a different occasion.
I think the time before, or was that the only time? I can't remember. I thought that was a follow-up.
One other time?
Yeah.
Do you know if she was been there recently as far as the follow-up would go?
Wasn't that the second time? I can't remember. I don't know if that was the...
So...
Was that the second time recently? You know what I mean? Like I saw her once and she came back? Or no? So I have no recollection of her as a, when in high school.
Yeah, right. So that's obviously going a few years back. So, she's not alleging that she didn't think anything inappropriate happened, in her previous visit. And she said that it sounds like she had some other issues that she needed physical therapy for and stuff. So she's not alleging anything inappropriate. It just stuck out in her head that she thought, hey, he was kind of like poking at my butt.
Right.
And then, and that's when.
Can catch up the TT, then I'm going for the ions.
Okay.
Because that stuff would be documented in
okay.
there. Okay. And if because maybe that's what I'm thinking is.
That's making me sick. I have a hard time watching that shit.
I purposely have not. I didn't want to, you know what I mean? So, it's like...
You sure did, you fucking piece of shit.
So, after your
You invented that shit around that,
so like
because...
this visit that we're talking about, that's...
It should say, like, all men...
wanted to touch children for a long time. It's a long fucking time, man.
Rib cage, and then my notes are usually pretty good.
Okay.
My notes are usually pretty good. So myofascial release, strain, counter strain, that's this positioning stuff. Okay. That's HPLA is cracking the back. Okay, so you see HPLA and you know that's high velocity, low amplitude. Okay, so HVLA is like a cracking.
Okay.
ME is muscle energy.
All right, hang on.
Sorry, HVLA
yep.
is cracking the back. That's high velocity, low amplitude.
Okay.
ME is muscle energy. That's where you again it's like working with the patient. Okay, push here.
Okay.
Strain, counter strain is you put them in a position where okay, does that hurt now? No. Okay, now just breathe. You try and put them in a position where it doesn't hurt. And I always say myofascial release you combine with the strain, counter strain, so that as they're breathing, you're releasing, you're following it, you're moving further because you're getting a release. So as they breathe, and as okay, if I'm here to start, I'm going to get more release. So you go farther and farther. Okay, I can restore length. I've got them down to another rib. You're following the pattern. Okay, so it's like I've been called the body. It's like you feel it. And most of the time my eyes are closed. Okay, because I'm doing like I'm doing right now. Like I'm feeling it. And that people say do that in my lecture too. I close my eyes.
Well, you've done it in here, I've noticed, right? Yeah.
You know what I'm just saying, that's the way, because it's the force, you know what I mean? It's like you feel it, and that's what...
You fucking piece of shit.
Okay? Cranial is where like you put your hands on the head, okay? And you're trying to feel the cranial bones move, I mean, go figure, okay? And when I was a student, I took Dr. Greenman, who...
Come on!
20-hour course, couldn't feel it. Dr. Mitchell, Fred Mitchell, whose father invented muscle energy. I mean, these are like the gods of manual medicine. Heads of rock, I still couldn't feel it. Viola Fryman comes in from, so that was 60 hours, I still couldn't feel it, okay? And so Viola Fryman comes in from California. She's like 70, 75, she was an older lady, and she was older than the other two, so she was old. And I finally felt it, and it's because the way that she described it to the class, you know, that it's a triangle. It's you, the patient, and the...
Gonna be late to rescue TT, man.
And you have to get into that so that, because you don't want the bad stuff to come back into you, because then you get all bad. You got to be able to pass it. It was this, you know, it's this conceptual thing, you know what I mean? So that you're trying to get into, like she was talking about how you can actually unwind them. Like if they were in a car accident, as you're going through this, you actually get them into positions that they went through, and as you unwind them, the pain goes away. It's esoteric, it seems strange, but it's bizarre that, that's medical, okay? I mean, like, and literally, you know, I'll go through gyrations with them because I'm actually unwinding them of what pattern built it in. So if they got built in that pattern, if you do a Rubik's Cube, you unwind it the right way, and you solve it in less than a minute, okay? So if you feel the tissues, okay, that was brought down here, then there, and all of a sudden they can release. Like the video showed that girl with the leg thing, you know what I mean? I did the releases, her range of motion doubles. You know what I mean? I can test that stuff beforehand, like I was showing with the girl sitting. I put my hand on her bum, you know, pain goes away, no pain's still there. I change my hand, pain's gone now. Okay, I know that that's then the angle or the vector that I need to do to unwind that. You know what I mean? Did I get into it too much? You know, like, did I feel like, oh, you know, there it goes, you know what I mean? And you just...
Yeah, just
the body rhythms. It's
on my own end.
It's what osteopathic myofascial release is about, okay? And it's unwinding. Okay, you can write that. I don't use that word, but that's a medical term for myofascial. It's unwinding. You unwind it. And it's the release of the fascia. You know, it works. You know, I don't know how else to say it. Do you have a rib problem? I can show you.
Right. Not currently.
You know, but
I'm sure at some point the older I get here, I'm going to start feeling my aches and pains, right? So, I mean, that's why you're here. You're here because it's under investigation, okay? We want to talk to you. We want to find out what you have to say about it. And like I said, I mean, I'm just going to go through this. I'm pretty sure I've covered everything with you that I want to cover. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything that she said, because, you know, I'm not going to hide anything. I'm not going to keep it. Right, obviously it's your whole profession. It's about who you are.
It's not even a profession, it's who me, you know what I mean? Like, there's such an importance, and to feel that I violated that with someone, that the sexual stuff, for, you know, it's the trust, that's the hard part.
Larry's voice begins to waver when talking about how he doesn't care about the sexual implications of what he did. He is more upset that he possibly broke Amanda's trust. That is notable, as it's often a technique used in YouTube apology videos. But pointedly, his voice doesn't continue to waver, and the emotion drops off incredibly quickly. In moments of high emotion, like the one Larry is feigning here, when tears begin to well up, it is continuous. It doesn't stop midway through a sentence, then restart. Larry also never actually cries, but maintains his sad voice for a little longer, despite laughing and joking about the accusation nearly 15 minutes ago.
Ship fuel critical. Right. That's the whole thing.
No, you're okay.
It breaks one's trust. That irritates me. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
What I was telling people, you can't get that.
TT.
That's the way it is. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you know, it's time, and that's me. I just, I don't know. You honor that, you respect that. That is the vital thing.
Ship fuel critical.
Somehow or other,
Vilken mjölor?
No, you are perfectly fine.
The interview goes on for another hour, and we will link it in the description if you want to watch the rest, but it's much of the same. O'Brien outright assures Larry that this is a case of miscommunication, just like every other time an accusation against him had been made. When Amanda had initially reported Nasser and spoken to those handling the case, she felt as if they really had hurt her. They were just as shocked and upset at what he had done to her as she was, and they promised her that they would do what they could to help her. However, after the interview, that stopped being the case. Nasser had been able to fully convince the police once more that his pelvic floor massages were medically sound, and that Amanda, like every other complaint before her, was too immature to understand that. The Title IX investigation into Larry had started in March, but 4 months later, it would be closed and Larry would be back to seeing patients. Amanda would get a copy of the report, which stated that she didn't understand the nuanced difference between what Nasser had done and sexual assault. However, this investigation had done something that no other before it had done, in that they had tried to get another medical perspective on one of Larry's treatments. Unfortunately, instead of contacting a neutral third party in the field who had no ties to Nasser, they instead asked 3 of his co-workers at MSU, most of which described themselves as good friends with Larry and had been taught by him. Larry himself had recommended they speak to his colleagues, and was the one to give the investigators their contact information. Destiny Tishnor Hawk, who has gone so far as to dissuade other women from speaking up about Larry's assaults, was also asked, and they all agreed that what he did was medically appropriate, and therefore didn't qualify as assault. In Amanda's version of the report, it concluded by stating that the university found her claim helpful in that it allowed them to examine certain practices at the MSU Sports Medicine Clinic. However, in the official version that was distributed to Larry and school officials, the conclusion instead said that the claim was, quote-unquote, helpful in that it brought to light some significant problems that the practice will want to address, and went further to state that Larry's conduct and actions in his on-site practice could leave the university open to lawsuits and expose patients to unnecessary trauma based on the possibility of perceived inappropriate sexual misconduct, meaning that the school ultimately knew that what he had done, despite stating it was medically sound, did qualify as sexual in nature, and that they were likewise responsible. This second report was kept from Amanda. After the Title IX investigation wrapped itself up in July of 2014, Larry went back to seeing patients, working at a high school in the area and acting as if it had just been a fluke. He was still being investigated by the MSU Police Department. However, they too reached out to some of Larry's co-workers for their medical opinions on what he had done to Amanda, and like before, they stated that this was medically sound. It appeared as if the years of networking and rising the ranks at MSU had paid off, as no one who was affiliated with the school spoke out against him. When Destiny Tishnor Hawk had been asked by the police if they had ever had an issue with Larry, or if he had ever had any sexual assault complaints like this in the past, she fucking lied to them. She lied to them and stated that he hadn't. The police case was eventually closed, and it was decided that the case itself not move forward. Because of this decision, Larry would go on to assault at least 12 other women on the MSU campus, most of which were underage. However, no one at the school, much less Larry, knew that this was the beginning of the end. It was 8 a.m. one morning in early June at the Caroli Ranch Gymnastic Training Camp, where the dominoes that would lead to Nasser's decades of abuse becoming public would begin to fall. As they stretched and got ready for that day's first training session, gymnasts Alyssa Bowman, Allie Reisman, and Maggie Nichols began speaking about Larry's treatments and how they felt uncomfortable with how he touched them. The conversation sparked something in Nichols, and when she got back to her home gym after the camp, she spoke to her personal coach about the treatments. She described how he, multiple times, had massaged her groin, crotch, and even inserted his fingers into her vagina for long periods of time to help her with a knee injury. She described how in multiple instances he would strip her naked on his table and touch her in ways that didn't seem appropriate. She went further to relay that Nasser had gone so far as to add her as a friend on Facebook, and after he had touched her, sent her a message saying she looked beautiful in the photos she had just posted from her prom. But it wasn't just her, said Nichols. He does this to everyone. Unlike so many others before her, Nichols' coach didn't diminish her claims on the basis that Nasser was an amazing doctor who knew what he was doing, and that she should just trust him. His unprofessional behavior, messaging minors, and touching them while unsupervised struck a chord with her, and she realized instantly that something needed to be done. She immediately informed Maggie's mother, telling her what had happened to her daughter at the mandatory gymnastics camp that had been operating for years, and they devised a plan on how they were going to proceed. 10 days after Maggie had returned from the camp, and only a couple of days after she was made aware of the claims, Maggie's coach, Sarah Jonesy, sent a text message to Rhonda Fay, the vice president of USA Gymnastics, asking if they could speak on the phone. These are the notes that Rhonda took while on the phone with Jonesy. June 17th. Sarah called me at 5:48 p.m. I called her after she texted me. She notified me of her athlete having 3 uncomfortable encounters of therapy with trainer Larry Nasser. She stated he massaged her on the groin area and too close to the vagina for her knee. 2013 World Selection Camp. 2015 Italy Selection Camp. 3 times. Also stated that he private Facebook messaged her that she looked beautiful in her prom dress. She just felt uncomfortable. 2 other athletes agreed about the uncomfortable factor. Simone Biles, Ali Reisman. After the phone call, Rhonda immediately called Steve Penny, the president and CEO of USA Gymnastics. She informed him about the complaint that had been made. He told her not to say or do anything, as it was his responsibility. She stated he would have to handle everything going forward, and that he would be reporting this to the proper authorities. At the time, Rhonda believed that meant he would be reporting this to law enforcement. Penny then called Jonesy, asked her to repeat what she had been told by Nichols. She once again went into great detail, and Penny told her he would be contacting the authorities over these claims, and that she should hold tight and not talk about it with anyone else outside of him and Rhonda, as to not alert Larry into the investigation into him. A week later, Larry emailed Rhonda inquiring about his travel
How is it
arrangements
fucking
for the
critical?
upcoming World Championship selection camp. Rhonda forwarded the email to Penny, asking
It doesn't
him
even
how to
fucking
properly
make
proceed,
sense.
as she was under the impression that he had already reported Larry to the FBI. Penny told her to let Nasser know she would be getting back to him after the Pan Am Games, but didn't go any further to state what they would be doing afterwards. Later that month, Sarah and Rhonda traveled to the Caroli Ranch where Larry had set up to work with the national team. Sarah had been told not to speak out about Nasser and the claims against him, but immediately told Rhonda that other gymnasts had likewise spoken about him, touching